I think we have everybody in here. Once again, we appreciate everyone coming out to this inaugural Hall of Fame induction for Warren Central Athletics. You know, you've got to start somewhere, and I don't think you could have picked a better crew, personally knowing all these and having seen them in action, being a part of their lives at some point. I guess that dates me when I can say I was around when Mr. Crowe was here. But, no. It was all good. It was all good, Mr. Crowe, I promise. But, you know, it's an honor for me to be up here, to be able to hopefully share some clean stories about some of these folks. I was around when I was a student here, got to be a part of them. And then later on, at some point, I got to think I broadcasted a lot of their ball games at some point. To begin with, before we get into the official introductions here, we'd like the Superintendent of Warren County Schools, Mr. Tim Murley, if he would come up and make some remarks at this time.
Thank you, Scott. I agree. We couldn't start out with a better group. Have a lot of history. Part of this group we probably don't want to talk about. But this group, as you look at them, you know what they've accomplished, and we've all seen that. And they've set themselves apart. And I think that's the neat thing about them, all their accomplishments, whether it's in academics, athletics, leadership. They were working when other people weren't. They were practicing when other people weren't. They're still practicing when every chance they get. They were planning when other people weren't, and it set them apart. And I think it's a neat thing that they're going to be known for that in the halls of this school. You know, and I want to thank them for starting, I guess, for helping develop the tradition of excellence that Warren Central has. And if you've ever many of us have been dragons and still have that dragon blood in us. And if you've been that, you know that tradition of excellence, and you can swell up with pride with that. And I don't want to embarrass any of them, but I do want to call two or three of them out. One is Vanous Lloyd. Vanous Lloyd took me in when I began teaching, and that's the truth. I was scared to death. And he taught me things about education I still don't need to know today. But I appreciate it, Coach. The second one is Joe Hood. Coach Hood was, he never wants me to tell this. He was one of my teachers. The first year he taught, I think it was first year, I was a student of his. And I know how he, you know that thing about that we remember how you made us feel. Coach Hood was always a fatherly figure to so many people. And I remember right now how we felt in his class. We loved him. He's still one of my favorite teachers. And I appreciate Coach. Even Head Haskins appreciates it, Coach. And the third person I want to, 30 years ago this year, Mr. Crowe took a chance on a brand new, green, probably ignorant, young agriculture teacher. And he invited me into the family of Warren Central High School. And I'll forever be in debt to him over taking that chance. And he taught me many things, Mr. Crowe, that I still use today, whether individually when you talk to me or the way that he expected the staff and the students in this school to strive for excellence and be the best that we possibly could. And I use that right now when I talk to teachers, especially young teachers and students, a lot of the things that he taught me. And I appreciate that, Mr. Crowe. And I guess, and I'll quit with this. I just think it's a great thing that the accomplishments that these people did in whatever area that they were in is going to be forever recorded in history in the hallways of this school. And I hope that as students walk down through there, they can look at those names and they can see those accomplishments and say, I want to be like that. And they can, and these are the kind of people that change the world. And I appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murley. At this time, I'd like to invite the principal. She's a former basketball coach, former cheerleading coach here. the wife of a football coach, and now she's the principal here. This is the principal of Warren Central, Lisa Hood.
And Mr. Crowe still can't believe it. Welcome to Warren Central High School tonight on this wonderful occasion. I'm always proud to be the principal of Warren Central, but I just feel very honored tonight and just so very proud of our school for our inductees tonight and for the vision that Todd Stewart and the committee had to get this going. And tonight a lot of people said, you know, Ms. Hood, this is really nice. This is really nice. Thank you. And I said, I really didn't have anything to do with it because they just took it. I'd say, Todd, what are you doing tonight? You got a game? No, we're having a meeting. And it was like a secret meeting, and they wouldn't let me know. And then to walk in tonight. So I know that Todd is going to elaborate with the committee and all that they have done. But once again, it just makes me so proud. And then all of you that are here tonight, whether as a guest of one of the inductees or just a faculty member, a community member, a past Warren Central graduate, a friend of one of those that are being inducted. I hope I just include all of you all and just the care that you've had for Warren Central and the Warren Central community. And so we welcome you, and then that also just makes me proud that you all still carry that on and want to be a part of this. Warren Central High School, and you all know this, the tradition of our athletics and academics and all, but just the heritage and the tradition that we have. I hope you all noticed when you walked in today on your way to the auditorium and to the cafeteria, just the traditions written up, and then we have a lot of our athletes. We are going to have pictures posted out in the gym lobby, and we've been trying to do some things out there. And even our students here right now are very proud of that. You'll see them staring at the walls and looking at that and asking questions, and they still do those cheers and they do the fight song, and you know it's carried on to the football team after every game gets in the stands and does the fight song. And at the baseball games, we'll be at away games, and it makes the other teams mad because they cheer and they support their people and they're proud to be a Dragon. And I just thank you for that, and I thank you all for starting that, because this is where it came from. This is where the tradition and the heritage came from that now carries on. And as I, look down through that, of course, Clemette was here, and I had done my student teaching with Curtis Turley in 82, so I got to see Clemette play, and then I was gone for a year and came back and got to coach with Vanous, and then there's Kelly, and I got to work for Mr. Crowe, and then, Damon's not our son, but I love him, Stanley, just like he was, even though I know he's your son, and then, of course, I married that one, love him too, and I've had a crush on Tim Reilly since, I hope that's not in the paper, scratch that, I really haven't. But we are good friends, and so this is a wonderful group, and so I'm not going to sing because it's about them, but thank you. Continue to come support our athletics and visit us at any time. Thank you.
And I can promise you the first time I met her back in 82 when she was here, she was full of pep then too, and she's carried it on. There's no doubt about that. At this time, the gentleman who was responsible for putting this all together, he's also a former Lady Dragon basketball coach, softball coach, currently the athletic director here, Mr. Todd Stewart.
Okay, I want to keep this short because these are the people we came to see, but I do have to say a few things. First of all, it's great to see so many old friends, and I mean that in the most loving way. And I just realized a few minutes ago, this is my 26th year, and every principal that I've worked for is in the building tonight. That's amazing. All five of them. So that's got, of course, Mr. Crowe, Ms. Hood, Ms. Goff, Mr. McCraney, and Mr. Dyer. And that's that 5 outstanding people that I've had the privilege to work with. I've got to thank a few people. First of all, I've got to thank, if you'll look through your program, there are many people who made it possible for tonight to happen. Our sponsors, and it's not just, some people were willing to give donations, but other people help us in so many ways. They give us breaks on things, and they lead us in the right direction. Here, maybe I can help you here. So many things that they did. And if you get a chance, please thank these people, because without them, tonight wouldn't be possible. I want to thank real quickly the administration here at Warren Central, Lisa Hood, John Dempsey, Greg Dunn, who covered for me and was doing my job when I was probably doing something on this. I want to recognize 3 people that were not on the committee first. And let me explain something. You've got to have a woman's touch on something like this, because if not, we probably would have been sitting on the floor eating bologna sandwiches. But I want to, first of all, and I'm going to embarrass them. I'm going to have them stand. Rhonda Hemming, would you stand, please? Give her a big hand. Rhonda is not the athletic director assistant. She's the queen of athletics. Anything that gets done in the athletic department, it's probably because she told me I had to do it. The next person I would like to stand, Susan Thomason, would you please stand? Susan, she will tell you that she didn't do anything, but she really does. Anytime you ask her, she steps up. And also, the third lady I'd like to stand, and we found out at one of our committee meetings who is the real brains in this family. Debbie Stovall, would you please stand? She may be, there she is. She does, anytime I ask Debbie, well, basically when I ask Ken gets permission from Debbie, and then we get it done. I want to introduce our committee, our Hall of Fame committee, and I'll just ask them to stand, and then I'll say a few words. Scott Thompson, David Thomason, Sean King, go ahead and stand, guys and girls. Jeff White, Rhonda Biller, Ken Stovall, Junior Duff, and Patrick Edmondson. Would you all please give all these people a big round of applause? I cannot begin to tell you the work that was involved. And something that I've got to say right here, Rhonda Biller, you're amazing. Great job. She's the one that kind of had the vision for how the cafeteria and the auditorium should look. So Rhonda, unbelievable job. Patrick Edmondson, Mr. Statman, all the stats that are in the program. David Thomason, unbelievable job on the program. But everybody on this committee came to work or came to the meetings after work, did so much to get sponsorship and do all this. Just a couple things. People that know me well know that when I became athletic director, this is maybe the first thing as far as a big thing down the road that I wanted to do, and that's the truth. But what I tell people, Reilly, you know what I'm going to say. What I tell people is that my first item of business when I took over AD was to fire the golf coach. That's not true. He did a great job with that too. And I will say, and I think I need to say this process has not been without controversy. No one can deny the 8 that have been inducted up here. It's just there is an impressive list of people that will become members of this prestigious group in a few short years. When I get one of those phone calls, which I have, I always step up like a man, and I tell them that I voted for him, but Sean King didn't. And his number is, no. But it just goes to show the tradition that we have here at Warren Central. This is an unbelievable group. Next year's group will be unbelievable. The year after will be unbelievable. But tonight is about these original 8. We've got a former principal and athletic director. We've got coaches. We've got athletes. that have made such a big difference, not only for our school, but in our lives. And I'm very proud to be a Dragon, and I know all these people are also. So I would just like to say, again, thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for what you've done, inductees. Thank you.
Now let's get to the good part here. This is kind of a roast in a way because I can tell stories. And I've been asked to keep each one to 20 minutes. Now I can share on each and every one of them. But I'm not. Well, I could as we go along. Before I introduce our first presenter, I will say a few words about each one that I know about. The first inductee, and there'll be more about him, is I remember when I was a freshman walking through the halls here, and Mr. Crowe became principal my sophomore year, if I'm not mistaken. And I go into his office and tell him, I want to be your announcer, your PA announcer. Well, he looked at me and said, all right, you're it. So all home basketball games, started doing that, and the next thing I know, my locker's by his office. In between classes, Thomason, come here. So I'd be in his office. I got Joe Hood hired. That was one of our meetings, one of our many meetings that we had. You know, I got Joe hired. I got to give my stamp of approval on that, and a few other things. But Mr. Crowe, I have to give him a lot of thanks for his vision, what he saw in athletics. You know, schools now are very fortunate enough to have athletic directors. Well, back in the day, Mr. Crowe was principal and athletic director. He scheduled, and he expected nothing but the best of Warren Central, whether it was a student in the classroom, a teacher, or fellow principals and athletic teams. He strove to make. I want to say he probably laid the foundation of what helped Warren Central athletics become what they are today, because no one wanted to win any more than David D. Crowe. And it was fortunate enough that his name was put on that athletic Fieldhouse football. You know, he was a driving force about getting football to the level and where it has stayed for many, many years. But, by my senior year in high school, whether it was good or not, this microphone was mine. I got to do pep rallies. He just said, here, take over. And so I want to say before, anyone else does that, Mr. Crowe had a very, very, very solid impact on my life and helped make me, I feel like, what I am today. So thank you, Mr. Crowe. All right, first presenter who will be making some remarks, then all of our inductees will have a chance for rebuttal after the inductees have introduced them. And we also have a presentation we will make after the presenter has said their remarks. At this time, I'd like to welcome Mr. Jerry Bush. You know him as he's been known as Mr. Jostens around here for many, many years, and he'll have some hopefully kind words to say about David D. Crowe.
Well, thank you, Scott. What a great evening. What an honor it is for me to introduce the first inductee into Warren Central High School's Hall of Fame. First thing that came to my mind was Warren Central High School's crest with the words truth, honor, and loyalty. How relevant. I don't think I've ever met a more honest person, even to a fault. Excuse me. You may not always want to hear the truth, but that's exactly what you always got. Loyalty. How many times have I driven by Warren Central late at night to see his office lights just still on? When I was coming back, even if it was midnight from Owensboro, he'd still be there. How often have I witnessed his defense of Warren Central students and faculty? On a personal note, when the hailstorm came in '98, my mother was here. We were on spring break in Florida. She was in a closet for 2 hours. She called me hysterical. I could have called my sisters who live in Nashville, an hour and 20 minutes away. I could have called church members. I could have called friends. But the one person I did call was Mr. Crowe, because I knew I could count on him. He not only spent tireless many hours putting tarps on our house, taping windows, making sure that the rain would stop. He did such a good job, my mother called and told me not to come home. Marvin Burgess used to say, he only has 2 friends, and one's a dog. We all know that's not true. He has spent countless and unselfish hours shoveling driveways when it snowed, visiting friends in the hospital, nursing homes, and ultimately the cemeteries. This is a good and kind man, as most of you know. Honor, excuse me, I'm so sorry. Webster defines honor as one whose worth brings respect or fame. I dare say there's not a person in this room tonight who does not respect this man and what he stands for. I could talk a long time about how much I respect him, but I'll just say a word. That Mr. embodies this man as much as anyone as I know. We have been miles away many times, and someone would invariably recognize him and call out Mr. Crowe, never by his first name. Even when we have friendly card games, his friends call him Mr. Crowe when it's his turn. He never sought recognition for himself. He just always wanted the best school and the recognition for his students and faculty. I must add that he is probably one of the smartest people I've ever known. He could have been a doctor, been a great lawyer, scientist, but instead he dedicated his life to education of the youth of Warren County. For that, I am personally grateful. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Murley and Mrs. Hood, I give you the one person who will never need an introduction in this building. My friend and yours, Mr. David Crowe.
Thank you, thank you. This is indeed an honor. In my professional life, I have been honored previously, but certainly nothing to this extent. I have just a few comments in response I'd like to make. First of all, I want to recognize a special person who's been with me for 44 years. We met at Western, and it turned out we were from the same county, and which we found out later, different schools, different parts of Hopkins County, but we met cued at Western and lived in the same county. Now, how fantastic is that? I want to introduce my wife, Joan Crow, retired teacher also. She's been my inspiration, my support, my encourager. And on our 9th wedding anniversary, now how's this for timing? Our daughter, Sarah Ashley, came to live with us on our 9th wedding anniversary. Ashley, stand up and be recognized, please. People ask occasionally, Mr. Crowe, what are you proudest of in your professional life at Warren Central? And I say, well, that's an easy one to answer. I am so very proud to share the name on a diploma of approximately 10,000 students who graduated during the time I was there. Warren Central, as you know, had about 2,100 students for many, many years, and we graduated 500 students a year for several years. And I added it up once, and our number during the time I was here was about 10,000 students. So I'm very, very proud of those students and the things that they have done and the successes that they have become. On the other hand, sometimes I'm asked, well, what are you not proud of? Well, or what is your concern? My concern is for the students who were here who did not graduate for whatever reason, and who now go through life with the handicap of not having a high school diploma. I'm also proud of the people that I had a part in bringing to Warren Central, to Warren County. For example, Miss Lisa Harper, who's now a Hood, and her husband Joe Hood, and even our school superintendent, Mr. Tim Murley, former teacher at Warren Central. In fact, as he said 30 years ago, this year, he was just a little green agriculture teacher, and a very fine one, I might add. I'm proud that I had a hand in the employment of Mr. Todd Stewart and many, many others. People who are here now who work with the young people in our community and who encourage them to be successes. Better mention Mr. Larry McCraney also. I had the honor of working with him for several years at the end of my career. Very energetic, very astute individual. When someone asks, well, what are you the most proud in the athletic area? And I say, well, that's another easy one. Well, I'm proud of all of our championships. I'm proud of all the students who succeed athletically. But I'm especially proud of the 1983 Girls Basketball State Championship, led by Clemette. And what I remember from that year and those years, I remember two things in particular. First of all, we had no money. We had absolutely no money to fund our athletic programs. You know, now in education, if you have a problem, you simply throw money at it. But back in those days, we had to raise and bake sale and yard sale and those types of things. And I remember that during the state tournament in 1983, we asked the band to play for us for all 4 games, and it cost us $1,000 a game. You know, you can't ask them to play and not provide them with a ticket, and you have to provide them with transportation and drivers and chaperones and those types of things. And I can remember thinking, where are we going to get the money for this state tournament? The other thing I remember about it is exhaustion. The entire team, our parents, administrative staff, and everyone, we were simply exhausted. The expectation was so high that year that we were going to win the girls' basketball state championship but that's exactly what we did. I remember after the game, after the 4th game, the championship game, we were back at the hotel motel, and we wanted to have a celebration, and I was wondering, how in the world? Well, Coach Clemette Haskins came up and said, Mr. Crowe, don't worry about it. We'll take up the collection, and he did, and we had our celebration right there at the hotel. That's another instance of parents helping out with Warren Central programs. While I'm talking about Coach Haskins, let me say that Coach Haskins, I just finished your book. It's called Breaking Barriers, and I just recently finished it. And it's an outstanding book. I would put it on the level of a great book. It's about basketball. It's about, it's more than just a basketball book. It's a history book. It's a history of high school basketball, history of college basketball at Western Kentucky University. It's an inspirational story, certainly. It's a story about our society. And it's really more than that. It's a love story of the Haskins family. And it's just an outstanding book. published in 1997, and I would hope that the bookstore could get copies of it, because I encourage each and every one in this audience to read that book and to pay close attention to it. Other things that I'm proud of. I'm proud that in 1990, a team of Warren Central teachers and students were invited to the White House for a special program in honor of the school's drug-free school policy and drug-free school plan. And we went to the White House, and we were honored simply by being there. But there's been so many things. I'd like to tell two short stories, two short instances from my professional career, and then I'll say thank you again and sit down. In the fall of 1965, I was doing my student teaching at College High, later to be University High, with Mr. Bobby Houck. And Bobby's in attendance tonight. Mr. Houck, stand up and be recognized, please. He's here somewhere. Outstanding educator, outstanding gentleman, and over all of these years, I have considered myself fortunate to have been assigned with him for those 9 or 10 weeks. Well, I was doing my student teaching in math, and Warren County Public Schools needed a math teacher for Alvaton High. And I was recruited heavily by the school superintendent at that time, by the school principal, even by some students, because they really needed a math teacher. So I ended my student teaching one day and went to Alvaton High the next, introduced myself to the students, and we had some little short placement tests so I could try to find out just how far. We were well into the year then, and these students had not had a teacher. Small high school in southern Warren County. And this, what I'm about to tell you, actually happened. It's chapter 1 of my book, if I ever get it written. Prior to beginning class, on my second day, a group of students and myself were in the math room overlooking the front parking lot, and one little freshman girl said, "Look, there's a snake in the parking lot." And there was. It was what we used to call a blue racer, or it was a black snake. And a little freshman student named Bobby Wilson said, "Don't worry, Mr. Crowe, I'll get it." Well, I hadn't been worried until then. He was out the door, down the wooden steps, clunk, clunk, clunk. And the little girl said, "Mr. Crowe, don't worry, he does it all the time." I said, "Well, okay." Bobby chased that snake down, caught him by the tail, worked his way up, got him behind the head. A few minutes later, we heard clunk, clunk, clunk. Bobby came back up the stairs and stepped into the math room. Everyone gathered around, all the students watched, and there I was. And Bobby's holding this snake. It's wrapped around his arm, its mouth open, and he's holding it by the neck. And in a moment, Bobby says, "Well, Mr. Crowe, look at there, he's biting me." That snake had slipped loose, had slipped his neck from his grasp, and started biting Bobby on the wrist, and believe me, blood was everywhere. And here I'm thinking, oh no, my teaching career is lasting 2 days. I'm finished now. I'll be the only teacher who's ever had a student snake bit in class on his second day. Now, it wasn't a poisonous snake, thank heavens, but blood was everywhere. We finally got it cleaned up, and Well, this is the same Bobby Wilson that graduated from Warren Central a few years after that. And when Exxon needed someone for the Alaska pipeline to check the wells and to do some welding and to help with them, they called on Bobby Wilson. And Bobby was instrumental in checking the wells and working so that the lower 48 could be provided with oil. He still lives in Alaska, I understand. The second story I want to tell, now that's a true story. I very seldom tell it because people simply don't believe it. And I say, well, maybe that's my 2-day teaching career. But the other story happened that same school year, but it was in the spring of 1966. Bowling Green's own Joe Marshall, who recently passed away, was an agent and scheduling person of the great Western movie star Sunset Carson. And Sunset Carson would go around, you can catch him on the Late Show every now and then. He would go and provide a shooting demonstration with a .22 rifle at schools and rodeos and all of those types of things. In fact, you can Google Sunset Carson on the internet and see him do this very thing. But he came to Allenton School. Our principal booked him. Now, this was in spring of 1966. I don't think Miss Hood would want to do something like this today, but Sunset appeared in our gym with a rifle along with Mr. Joe Marshall. With a backdrop he put up on the stage, and he would shoot into that backdrop. And it was sort of an Annie Oakley type situation for you history people. And he would shoot into that backdrop, and he knew what he was doing. He was very stable. And I began to gain a little confidence in him when they placed a knife blade toward the floor, and he shot the edge of the knife and split the bullet and put out a candle that they'd placed on either side of the knife. I said, my goodness, maybe he is safe. Well, about this time, Mr. Joe Marshall, the late Joe Marshall from Bowling Green, takes the microphone and said, we need 2 teacher volunteers. Well, we had about 500 or 600 students there who decided that Mr. Crowe and Mr. Robertson would volunteer. And how do you say no when they start screaming and they were chanting our names for us to go out there and be shot at? You know, perhaps they knew something. Perhaps they thought it was a good way to get rid of us. But Mr. Robertson's with us tonight. Dickie, where are you? But anyway, they kept on and on. And we could see that they were going to have Mr. Crowe and Mr. Robertson up on that stage with Sunset Carson shooting at us with a .22 rifle. This actually happened. Well, anyway, we did, foolishly, and we sat up on the stage, and Joe Marshall blew up long balloons, and we would hold them in our teeth, and Sunset Carson would shoot at. It's on the internet. You can Google it, and you can see it on the internet. And we did that, and needless to say, it looks like we both lived through it. But that's a demonstration of what not to do in your beginning teacher year. That actually happened, and if anyone shows up with a firearm around school now, they go immediately to jail, which is where they should be. But my goodness, Sunset Carson was hired to come there and shoot at us. Okay, I promised to kind of hush up after those 2 stories. I've got many, many more. That's the Sunset Carson story is chapter 2 in my book. I want to thank everyone for remembering some of the things that all of the inductees participated in, all the successes and all the fun and all the shared experiences and learned experiences. And I'd like to thank the committee or committees for remembering an old broken down administrator. I was at this school 29 years as a teacher, assistant principal, and principal. I was actually principal from July the 10th, 1978 until June the 1st, 1997. See, I've got it all marked down to the day. And with that, I promise to close, so I will close. And thank you for coming, and I hope that you have enjoyed your evening as much as I have enjoyed my evening. And I'll turn the microphone back over to Mr. Scott Thompson. Thank you, thank you. And I'm going to get that book written. I have more stories similar to those that involve this school. Let me tell one more. Please do. People ask what I'm proud of, and I've already said I'm proud of the successes of Warren Central students. Let me tell you, in 2001, when the towers came down in New York, the Port Authority and the people in government there called upon a Warren Central graduate, an engineer, a graduate of this school, chemical engineer, mechanical engineer, every kind of engineer, brilliant student, had him 3 years at Alberton. I had him 1 year as a teacher here. And they called a Warren Central graduate to come up and advise on how to clean up the mess and how to build something new. And that's Mr. Kenny Darnell, who now lives in East Tennessee, has an engineering firm. He's absolutely a brilliant person and a Warren Central graduate, one of many, one of these 10,000 that I was talking about earlier. Thank you.
It's hard to follow that gentleman right there, let me tell you. And he could tell some stories on... I'll just leave it at that. Guess who's next? Like at dinner, I was telling Clem and Yvette, her mom and dad, that there's stories on her that I can tell that they don't know about. Let me tell you. And Mr. Crow's right. What a family. And I do want to thank Clem for not putting me in his book. Got to know him very well for many, many years, and they've opened their home to me many times. Here, when he was coach at the University of Minnesota, top-of-the-notch people. They're just top-notch people, and this is one of them right here, this next young lady. All I'll say is there's a year before I think it was her 2 years before they won it. I guess it was my senior year. Coach Lloyd and I, we roomed together. We were in Lexington. Went up to the state tournament. The other room was an female assistant coach, Clemette, and another young lady. Whew. I could tell some stories there, and then I won't go into any details, but I also will mention, I don't think there was a dry eye when we drove back from Richmond. Clemette rode with me. I had a Volkswagen. her and another teammate of hers, they rode back. Somehow I got trusted with them. You know, here I am a senior, and I get these two younger ones, and I don't think we had a dry eye coming back about some of the things we talked about, and about some things we shared, and just a great. I'll leave it at that. But to present her, and when you can always have a family member to come up and say some good words about you, and the younger sister of Clemette Haskins, Lori Haskins Cook.
Hello. Scott just assumed they're going to be good words. I didn't say. I am the little sister. No, I just would like to say that it gives me a great honor and great pleasure to be able to introduce my sister to the inaugural class of the Warren Central High School Hall of Fame. I kept asking, what should I say? Mom and Dad, what do you all think I should say? Because they all know there's no telling what will come out of my mouth. But I promised them that I would do them justice, hopefully. But as I started really thinking about Warren Central High School and being Clemette's younger sister, I thought I would share the experience from my perspective as Clemette's younger sister when she attended Warren Central High School, and a lot of you all know her as the phenomenal basketball player, Miss Basketball, what have you, but it was an honor to be her sister, her younger sister, her little sister. And Jerry, I understand you get a little choked up here, don't you? Kind of catch you off guard. But it was just as a momentous occasion for me. I remember being in elementary school and being so excited that Clemette had a game tonight, Warren Central basketball. And as I would try to share the stories and the experiences with my friends over the years when we lived in Minnesota, when I lived around, and trying to explain the magnitude of girls' high school basketball in the 80s. What a tremendous accomplishment these young ladies had in the competition, be it Allen County, Laura Eccles, be it Cammie Thomas at Warren East, just the camaraderie that got behind the community, and that it brought so many people together, people that didn't even have children that played on the teams, but they came anyway because they knew it was going to be great competition and it was going to be fun. It was the best ticket in town, a Warren Central Lady Dragons basketball game. And I mean that, and obviously the state tournament, when the fire trucks and the police escort met us, and just as the team went. But even beyond that, the years building up to that, it was just such an awesome time to be able to come and enjoy, and the impression it made on myself as a young woman playing basketball, obviously following behind Clemette. And Coach Lloyd remembers. We shared, because everything, Clemette's little sister, Clem's daughter, and yeah, Coach Lloyd. And and I told him the first day of practice, I said, Coach Lloyd, I am not Clemette. And he says, after I took that first shot, he realized, no, she's not. But at the same time, I had a wonderful experience in just being able to follow such a tradition. I'm so very proud of my sister, obviously, for the accomplishments that she has done on the court, be it all starting for me, when she was playing varsity in 6th and 7th grade and playing at Warren Central. And then I think back to, following my sister at the Final Fours, being a coach. But I think as a younger sister watching this and how I was so passionate about basketball, it all really began here at Warren Central High School. And so I really thank you all for selecting my sister to be part of this inaugural class. And I look forward to hearing what words she has to say as well. Thank you.
Wow. Baby sisters, right? I felt like I made it closely without being hammered too bad. It is, wow. Such a great honor to be here. And I want to thank the committee, Todd, and your committee for honoring me and all of us with this distinguished entry into the Hall of Fame of Warren Central. I'm really glad to know that I got in, even though Jeff, I didn't know you were on the committee. Jeff White, and I were in the same Warren Central class, and at least Mr. Clayton's English class didn't enter into this discussion, so that's probably good, right? And I also feel like I'm in very good company. The inductees here, I know them all and met the younger ones since I've been here, but it is indeed just a really awesome thing to look and to see the company that I'm in, and realizing that we all belong to this great tradition of Warren Central High School. I also want to thank my family. You know, as we become older, our parents become wiser, right? And I want to thank my parents for everything. They have, the way that they have shaped me and all of and my siblings, but then also the things that they did that we didn't know they did. And David, thank you for telling me even something new about my dad and helping to help me celebrate in the full and our entire team. So there's so many things that the wisdom that I've learned from my parents, and to watch them move behind the scenes to make so many things possible for me and for all of us. And so thank you, Mom and Dad, for being just who you are. You know, when I was thinking about just having an opportunity to just stop and reflect on Warren Central girls basketball, the first place I started really is with Title IX in 1972, when there was a law passed that girls were to have equal access to education, opportunities, athletics, etc. And so when I came along in 1979, though it may not have been equal, there were at least opportunities for this to happen, this magic that happened with the 1983 basketball team, and that we were able to pursue scholarships even. And so while I stand here and feel very proud and grateful, I also remember the women that played sports before there were opportunities for me and for the other women that have gone beyond. So we're grateful to the women that played at Warren Central High School before 1983 as well. Mr. Crowe, wow. What he has meant to me personally, you know, so many times when we're young, we watch by example, and we get older, and again, everyone, teachers and parents and every principal seems so much wiser at this standpoint. But I remember those things, he would pull me in the office, and I wasn't sure if I was in trouble or not, because Jeff probably did something to get me in trouble. But it always was pulling in to make sure I understood what the expectations were. Not in a pound you over the head type, but just what is expected of you as a student athlete and as a leader. And so thank you, Mr. Crowe, for giving me those foundations. And also, I was talking to my friends today, and I said, you know, Vanous Lloyd was probably the best coach I could have ever had. And I've played for other coaches, and I had a dad that knew a little bit about basketball, but the most important thing that my dad knew about basketball, my mom told him, don't coach her. And he didn't. And he allowed Vanous to coach me and trusted Vanous, and I trusted Vanous in a way that I was shaped, and everything that I was to become was because Vanous was wise to know when and how to motivate, But most importantly, Coach Lloyd understood the gift of humor and the gift of understanding that all moments aren't heavy and all moments aren't pressurized, that there's this idea that you can have some fun and play ball at the same time. And so after he would talk, Lori said he's been losing his voice for about 40 years, but and then he'd say, "Okay, girls, let's go have some fun." And we would win and we would laugh on the bus. And he would tell jokes and we would laugh at his music, this country music, and we all learned something about one another. And the greatest gift that I've learned from Coach Lloyd is that you can be truly who you are and have fun doing it. And for me, having the pressure of being the daughter of and all of this expectation to play for a coach that understood that and just usurped all that pressure and all that expectation with the gift of gentleness and laughter was probably the biggest reason why I was able to play and not feel a lot of pressure, because Coach Lloyd allowed that to happen. So, Coach, thank you. And you know, we are talking about coaches. I was talking about coaches and administrators, and this is an athletic award, but I can't help but to think also about the teachers that were here. There's many that come to mind, but it's the late Frida Bakers and the Mr. Claytons and Miss Thompsons and Coach Lloyd and Mr. Murphy and so many teachers. And I'll tell a quick story on myself. I wasn't the best math student. I couldn't understand how triangles and numbers and all that, why they had to go together. And Miss Baker, I think, was the chair of the math department or something, and I wasn't doing so well. I wasn't even in her class. I was in another teacher's class, but that teacher told Miss Baker, and Miss Baker pulled me out of class and put her finger in my face. This was then. I don't know if you can do that now, but this was then, and she put her finger in my face and she said, "There is absolutely no way that I'm going to have the University of Southern California and all these colleges calling here and your math scores aren't good enough." And she said, "So you need to get yourself in gear. And as a matter of fact, I'm calling your mother." And she did. And one of the games that I didn't get to play was because my mom said I couldn't play. But of course, I limped a little bit and pretended like I was hurt. But the fact was, Miss Baker called my mother, and I couldn't play. And so I'm grateful now for those lessons and for those hard lessons, but also for coaches and parents and teachers that loved me enough and saw my potential to know that perhaps I could just be somebody greater than I thought I even was at that time. And they cared enough to hold me tight and to let me go all at the same time. So I want to say thank you to the teachers that were also here that helped to shape and form me and to make an impression on me that makes me want to continue my education even now. And just a few stories. There's so many times, Lori alluded to it, that I move to Arizona or Minnesota or somewhere, and I'm trying to explain to them about basketball. I have a good friend, a dear friend here with me from North Carolina, where they think they know a little something about basketball. And so she's been inundated for 2 days about this girls' basketball and about buses and fire trucks and police escorts and pep rallies in the school. And we come home and the gym's packed with people. And and that there's so many people, that the gyms are packed in the early 1980s for girls basketball. And she looked at me and she said, that's a documentary. And I said, you know what? You just might be right. Because it's like when you tell this story to people who aren't privy to our unique culture of Warren Central basketball, it really is truly amazing to think that a girls basketball team in the early 80s could come together and to galvanize a community and to have people following us and to play and to have fun at the same time. It really is a remarkable story, and one that I'm very, very proud to be a part of. I remember this relationship between my parents and teachers and coaches that was so important for my success. When we played Allen County my senior year, I had pneumonia and was sick, and I had to play, and somehow I had convinced my mother that I could play, and so we had an oxygen tank, and we were undefeated, I think, Coach Lloyd, yeah. Not I think, I'm sure. And we were playing in Owensboro, and I had this oxygen tank, and I mean, it was a big game. We were 1, they were 2. I couldn't miss the game. That was not an option. And at halftime, I was exhausted. I couldn't breathe, and Coach Lloyd says, "You're done. Put your clothes on." And I don't know if I ever talked back to Coach Lloyd before, but I was like, no way, I'm not, and I called myself having this confrontation with Coach Lloyd. And he says to Felice, "Go get her mother." Oh, no, not the mother. And Felice goes and gets my mom, and then I look up, and my mom shows up in the locker room. I mean, how embarrassing is this, right? My mom is in the locker room telling me to put my clothes on, that you're done. And so I didn't get to play the second half, and we went on to lose, but it only was to set up something greater later in the year. But I just say that to say that there's so many wonderful memories and so many wonderful teammates and experiences that I will treasure for a lifetime, and that I've been blessed to have a few accomplishments, but the greatest, and I really mean this, is winning a state championship with Warren Central High School, and that, my friends, is my greatest accomplishment. And thank you for being a part of it, and thank you for this induction. Appreciate it.
I can tell you, when she was in high school, she never said that many words. I remember pulling her out of a class one time and come do a radio interview with her, and she says, "Scott, what do I say? What do you?" I mean, because she let her actions speak on the court, and then finally, I think I was the one that got to break the news that, "Hey, you're Miss Basketball." And I remember getting her out of class, say, "You're Miss Basketball," and it's like, really? I mean, she really didn't expect it, and that was just a treat. Our next inductee here, a couple of them, I can't tell any bad stories on a couple of these. I wish. I should have done some research, but plus she's taller than I am. So when you got to look up and say, hello, you don't say anything bad about them. But our next presenter for SeSe Helm Brooks is her coach at that time, Todd Stewart.
Scott, you may not be able to tell any bad stories. A couple of weeks ago, SeSe emailed me, and I believe that what was contained in the email was that her church, was going to do a skit based about SeSe. And they needed, like, some things that she used to say. Some lines. And so, me being the smart aleck that I am, I emailed back, "Why don't you have them say, do I really have to play defense?" or why can't I play point guard? And the funny thing about the point guard thing is she really was a great ball handler. And her senior year, she shot 45% from three-point. If we had to have a three, the play was run for SeSe. If we had to have a basket, she was down on the block. But if we had to have a three-pointer, we ran a play for her. She hates these stories, but I'm going to tell them anyway. At that time, when a couple of the years that SeSe played, believe it or not, did you know, Lisa Hood was my assistant coach. And they were making fun of me in the cafeteria about this, so I'm going to go ahead and tell the story. We're practicing one day, and I think I'm going to Metcalfe County or somewhere an hour away to scout. And so I tell Lisa, I want you to finish up practice. I want to do some shooting drills, told her what to do, and then make sure we shoot free throws. We're not shooting free throws well. She said, okay. So I leave the gym, and then I think I've got a roster of Metcalfe County that I forgot in my office. So about 2 minutes later, I come back in. When I come back in, Lisa and SeSe are leading cheers. They got the whole movement and everything down. I'm not going to tell you what I said. This is a family event. The second story, and she really hates this one. I was upset one day. I thought that the night before that we did not take the opportunity to take charges. And I just felt like, we just didn't step up and do what we should have done. Well, I had the big girls on one end, and Miss Hood had the guards on the other end. And I thought, okay, we'll make an example out of this, and who better to start with than SeSe. So what I did was I said, you're first, and got her at the free throw line, and I didn't dribble. I just tucked the ball under my arm, and I took off. Folks, I lost my balance. And probably about 3 feet before I got to SeSe, I fell head first into SeSe. And we started at the free throw line, and we rolled. By the time we ended, we were both up against the wall. And the girls on my end, they didn't know whether to laugh or not. I could hear some snickering, but I knew something was up on the other end. I could just tell something was up on the other end. And Lisa Hood had the guards in the earthquake position on the other end. They were all covered up, had their head down below, between their knees. I'll start out. I thought I would say a couple, kind of divide this into things that you know about SeSe Helm Brooks and things that you don't know about her. First of all, and these are unbelievable stats, she is a leading career scorer in Warren Central history, boys or girls, with 3,144 points. That's 3 careers for some people. She was a parade high school All-American. She was a Kentucky All-Star. She was a 2000 Associated Press All-State First Team, 2000 Fourth Region Player of the Year. Most rebounds in a career of any Warren Central player with 1,486. Most field goals in a career with 1,316. And the single season record for points per game, field goals made, field goal percentage, free throws, and free throw percentage. And, of course, she played for the University of Kentucky. Now, the things that you may not know about SeSe Helm Brooks. She was an unbelievable leader of the Lady Dragons in her time here. She had a calming presence. She worked extremely hard. And then, even if we weren't playing well, I can remember SeSe saying, Coach, we're going to be all right. We're okay. And she meant it. Another thing you may not know about SeSe is that while she was playing at the University of Kentucky, she was 2 times recognized by the Southeastern Conference as a member of the Good Works team, who recognizes those individuals who make outstanding contributions to their community. And another thing that you may not know about SeSe, while at Kentucky, SeSe lost her mother, and because of her strength and her faith in God, continued to be an outstanding student and athlete. As great as a player SeSe was, it pales in comparison to the type of person she is. And one more thing, and I'll let her talk because I know she's got about a 30-minute speech. And I think this probably is as important as anything. Whenever I talk to SeSe, whether in person or on the phone or email, she always ends the conversation the same way. I love you, Coach. Back at you.
First and foremost, I must give thanks to God, because without Him, none of this would be possible. It is indeed a great honor and a privilege to be recognized at such a wonderful event with such extraordinary individuals and great leaders. Upon finding out that I was going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame, I kept asking Coach Stewart if I had to give a speech because I'm not a good speaker, and he kept saying yes. So I began to think about one thing that I would want everyone to know if I had to send one message. And that one thing is thank you. Thank you to my family, my friends, my coaches, my principals, and even my teachers. I thank you, Daddy, for always pushing me and making sure that I got my shots up, even when I would try to hide and pretend that I was asleep. And I thank you, Coach Hood and Coach Stewart, for pushing me and putting up with me, even when I kept saying I wanted to cheerlead, or even when I continuously suggested that I should be the point guard. Or even when I would get a head start on suicides, it would still come in last. Thank you. I appreciate that. But again, I must say thank you. Thank you for pushing me towards greatness. Thank you for paving the way and setting the standard so that I would have something to work towards. Appreciate that. Thank you for showing me what greatness is, and most of all, thank you for believing in me, even when I didn't always believe in myself. So in saying that, whether you were my traditional family or my school family, I share this honor and this award with you, because not only have I achieved greatness, we have achieved greatness. And I love you all, and I thank you.
Our next inductee, probably one of the greatest high school football players I think I have seen. I've seen a lot of them, especially during his time here at Warren Central throughout the state of Kentucky. All these radio people would be calling me wanting to do an interview and wanting me to talk about Damon Hood. Now, tell me about Coach Hood's son, as Lisa touched on. I'd start telling him, I said, it's not his son. Are you sure? I said, when you get a look at him, you will know that is not Coach Hood's son. And then once we get to a game and the other guys are going, I see what you mean. But this guy, I can tell you, from what I remember of him being here, he conducted himself as a gentleman here at Warren Central High School. Always a smile on his face whenever you see him. You want to talk to him before or after a game. He was very polite. Always, yes, sir. He just had that demeanor about him. He always walked with that head high. Very proud young man. And I can remember, people think he was a runner. He was. But I don't know what Joe would have done without his kicking. If I'm not mistaken, Damon could kick the football. He would kick off. He was extra points, field goal. He had a leg on him. He had legs on him. He could run. No one could tackle him. But he also, I think there was a few games, I think he scored every point because he'd score a touchdown, he kicked the extra point, or field goal. So not only could he run and no one tackle him, but he was such a big weapon when he played here. To introduce Damon Hood is Alan Talley.
Thanks, Scott. First, want to congratulate all this year's inductees, not just Damon, all of you. Special congratulations. What an accomplishment. I'm excited to be here to help recognize Damon. I do want to take a moment to let all of you know I kind of have mixed feelings about being the one doing this tonight. Some of you may not know my brother, Robert. Damon had planned on him doing that. He passed away on Christmas Eve Day just a month ago. If you didn't know my brother, he was a true Warren Central Dragon. If he missed a game on Friday night for football or on Tuesday night for basketball, he'd call me the next morning, how'd Central do? And if it's a game Damon played in, his next question, how'd Hood do? So he was his number one fan. Let me tell you about the first time I ever saw Damon. We were a year apart. He was an 8th grader at Cumberland Trace. I was a 7th grader at Alvaton. We played him in basketball. He was in our gym. Game ended. We're shaking hands with the other team, and I thought, by golly, I've got to ask their coach something. So I walk up to him, I looked him right in the eyes, and I said, there's no way he's in 8th grade. Have you got his birth certificate? All joking aside, if I remember right, he had about 15 rebounds that night and probably about 20 points. He was a man among boys. If you ask Damon why football, he'll credit 2 of his uncles from St. Louis who wound up playing Division I football. Damon and his family moved to Bowling Green in 1981 when he was 8 years old. Coach Hood will tell you he came to Central at a time where freshmen and sophomores didn't play varsity football. They just weren't good enough. But we all know Damon was different. His stats, they speak for themselves, and it's hard to believe any of his stats, some of his stats will ever be broken. He played on both sides of the ball, and as Scott mentioned, he kicked his junior and senior year. During those 2 years, he helped Warren Central to back-to-back state finals and went on to be named Mr. Football for the fall of 1990. Damon was also a standout each year in the spring on the track team. We tried to get him to play baseball, but he wouldn't do that. I was a baseball guy. He went on to have a successful career at the University of Kentucky, and again, he stepped in as a freshman and played quite a bit. Had it not been for a neck condition that was found by the Indianapolis Colts, I'm sure he would have had a successful NFL career as well. People that know Damon, they know he was a great student. He took high school serious and he graduated towards the top of his class in 91. While at UK, he earned a degree in math. Damon and his wife Stephanie, they currently live in Lexington. He did want me to get the record straight. They do not have children. In the program, they have Rhonda's 2 boys as Damon's kids. He does not have children. He usually starts sweating when we talk about kids. Damon's worked as a manager for FedEx Ground for 13 years. Before I call him up, I want to tell you the 4 things that I admire most about Damon Hood, and those of you that know him very well know this to be true. His work ethic was absolutely unbelievable. He's one of the most humble human beings I know. He's always going to give credit to others when he succeeds. I'm sure he'll do that in just a few minutes. And he doesn't judge anybody. And for those reasons, his list of friends is endless. Damon, on behalf of the Talley family, we say congratulations. You deserve it. Ladies and gentlemen, my friend, Mr. Damon Hood.
First of all, I'd like to thank Alan for that introduction. Alan's a good friend of mine, the assistant principal of Evanston County, but more importantly, he's the brother of one of my best friend, Rob Talley. Like Alan said, we did lose Rob on Christmas Eve day from leukemia. Besides my family, Rob is one of my biggest supporters and the biggest supporter of this school. Now, you know I got to tell a story about Rob. I remember my senior year, I think we were about to play Henderson County to go on to the semifinals. And Rob had to work. I think he was working at an international paper or something like that. And he was like, no, this is a big game for you guys. This is big. You know, I like to be there, but man, I got to work. I may skip out or, leave at lunch. And I'm like, look, now, don't get fired. I think we got a good shot here. But he said, I'm going to do what I can. I was like, but don't get fired. So anyways, during the game, I think it's about third quarter, we had the game in hand. Coach Hood called a play, 70 draw. I get the ball. There's this huge hole. I mean, a hole you can drive a truck through. I'm running through. I'm looking for somebody that's going to come out and blindside me. And as I'm running towards the end zone, look who I see. Rob Talley parked illegally by the Fieldhouse. He gives me like a head nod like, yeah, I'm here. I really miss him. I wish he was here to introduce me. I'm just so glad the Talley family can come here and share this great honor with me. Thank you. Now, on a lighter note, this is an exciting time for me to be inducted to the Hall of Fame. This is a great class to be induced in, and I want to thank all involved for choosing me for this memorable moment. I'd like to begin by thanking my family. First, I'd like to thank my sister, who's always had my back, always in my corner, kept me grounded. Believe me, she kept me grounded. And believe it or not, even though I'm the big brother, a lot of times I did look up to her too. I would like to also thank my mom, who's not here today, for always believing in me and telling me to dream big and not to settle for anything less, and also yelling at those games. Last but not least, I would like to thank my hero, my role model, my pops. When I first started playing football, I was a kicker / running back. And for those of you who know football, most kickers don't like to get hit. And during that time, I was no exception to the rule. I was about 7 years old when I first started playing football, and I could not take a hit. I was a crybaby. I got to admit, I was a crybaby. Y'all probably shocked, but it's true. But he never pushed me or discouraged me not to play. When I got, I think, cut from the team, he still worked with me. He never pushed me. He just continued to work with me. Now, he never said anything, but under his breath, he made me like, I don't know what's wrong with this kid, but I appreciate it about him. But there's one moment that I really realized that I had the best dad in the world. It was April of '94. That's when I got released from the Colts. It was a trying time for me. I was really down because I felt I had let a lot of people down. There's in this room, but most importantly, my father, because he had worked so hard with me, encouraged me, and just being there for me. And I know he remembers the phone conversation. We were talking on the phone, and he was like, "What's wrong?" And I was like, "I let you down." And I remember those words. He was like, "I've always been proud of you, and no matter what, you always be a success to me." And that may not sound like a lot, but those words meant everything to me. So, thank you. Next, I would like to thank my coaches, Coach Schuba, Coach Lynch, Coach West, Coach Livers, Coach Romanoli, Coach Lamb, Coach Woods, for putting together the best line the running back ever won. I can remember in practice when Coach Wood would blow that whistle, linemen would take off and run up on that hill to hit that 5-man sled, and they would be up there for hours. And then Coach Hood would blow the whistle, come back down for team. They'll run all the way back down. They would just be filthy, out of breath. And I'm like, man, they ain't gonna make it through practice. We still got team and conditioning, and but they would. But I knew with that work ethic that Coach Wood was putting those guys through, that when they got time in the game, any short yardage, goal line, that those guys was going to be there for me. So thank you, Coach. Finally, I would like to thank the best coach I've ever had. That's Coach Hood. Coach Hood would, he would push us to our limits. And when you thought you had no more else to give, he would push you some more. I would feel Coach Hood made us such a mentally tough and physical football team. I would feel sorry for a lot of teams that we would play, especially if they scheduled on their homecoming night. But Coach Hood was more than a coach to us. I mean, he's like you say, he's a father figure, he's a mentor. But I can remember when Coach Hood would have us bring our report cards, to him. And if you don't handle your business in the classroom, you're just gonna pay for it on that practice field. You're just gonna do some running. And I really didn't want to feel that wrath, so I always had good grades. I would like to also thank Mr. Crowe, our principal, athletic director, for believing in our team, providing us with a competitive schedule and allow us to travel out of state to showcase our talents. His support and leadership has allowed our success to flourish and to be recognized around the state. So thank you, Mr. Crowe. I would like to thank all my teammates I played with. I got to give a special shout out to the line up front, to Tom, John Napier. Those guys made my job easy. But last, not to forget, I'd like to thank those guys that came before me, the class of '86, Chris Turner, Delane Anthony Weaver, Jared Honshell, Jordan Hayes, Julius Hooks, and all those guys. Those were the guys I looked up to when I was in junior high. Those are the guys who started the foundation for the winning tradition at Central. And I knew once I saw them play, I wanted to be a part of that. To wrap it up, this has been a special night. It's been an unbelievable night. I am truly humbled about all the support that you guys have given me all through these years. And one thing I always say, that I'm always and will be and proud to be a Dragon forever. Thank you.
You better get a drink. I remember, as I shared earlier, I remember it was the spring, my junior year. Joe was going to be hired the fall of 1980, and Mr. Crowe comes in and says, "Guy's a football coach." I said, "Who is it?" "Just some guy out of Louisville, just won the state championship last fall." I said, "That's good." He said, "Joe Hood, he's going to come in here, and he's going to lead this program." Because by my senior year, when I graduated in '81, he was the third coach in 3 years. So, okay, here we go. Yeah, he's one of these, comes win state champions here, he'll come and go. Well, little did we know what he would do. It took him a couple of years. And then look at the products, the Damon Hoods, those kinds of folks like that. And like Damon said before him, the Chris Turners, those guys like that, the Jordan Hayes, the Mud Puppies. A lot of people, if you've been around, you know about the Mud Puppies. Dry weather night, didn't perform. I think it was North Hardin. I think that's where they were crowned. Mud Puppies go up. Big rain. Fortunately, I'm in a dry press box. they're out there on the field, and these guys were just eating it up, loving those linemen that Damon's talking about. And but a lot of people have come through the program, and the rest, they say, is history. The field here at Warren Central, the stadium here is named after Joe Hood, and not only was he great, very intense. If you were never around him in practice, I had the opportunity after practice a lot of times to be the brunt of a lot of things. If I remember right, he'd come in after practice, we'd be at his house or at my house, and I don't know how much longer I can do this. And he'd just have one of those days. Next thing you know, Friday night, he wins again. To present Joe Hood is one of his former assistant coaches, who's gone on to do quite well coaching himself, Mr. Rick Wood.
Thank you all, and again, congratulations to each of you. It's really unbelievable when you sit up here and look at all the accomplishments that these people have enjoyed throughout their life. I want to especially thank Mr. Crowe before I get started. One of the most intimidating things that I ever had, I think of Mr. Murley back there. When I interviewed with Mr. Crowe and Dr. Pierce, I know that what had to get me that job was my answer when they asked me something about Bloom's taxonomy. And I stumbled through it some way, and I always remember Mr. Crowe and the great job he did here. But our next inductee, I grew up watching him play athletics in the 60s in Tompkinsville. We grew up about a mile from each other. Joe Curry will tell you that he was the best shooter in the family. Trust me, he was not. Joe was a great athlete at Tompkinsville High School. In 1968, they probably had the best basketball team ever there. The only problem was there was a team at Glasgow that had a really good one too. I think they lost 3 games that year, and each one was to Glasgow. And Glasgow went on to win the state. Joe was a tremendous football player, ran track. I always spent a lot of time telling Damon that he was a 4'6", 4'5", 40, and Damon had a lot of trouble believing that, but he was. But when he came to Warren Central in 1980, he brought instant credibility. And I'm telling you, at that time, it's hard for you guys to imagine how much we struggled early on. I started coaching with Joe in 1981. I got thinking about that the other night. I thought, man, that's 20 years. And then my math skills kicked in, and it was a little bit longer than that. But we're getting old, Joe. But when he started in 1980, Warren Central had grown so fast to the 4A level that it was just really unbelievable. I mean, not only were we not very good in football, we had to play the best because of our enrollment. It just jumped so quickly. And, we started out with some rough years. And, later on as we got to the mid-'80s and the late 80s and all the success came, it was really unbelievable when I sat and think back that, is this really happening? To think that we would win all those regional championships and play for the state championship and all the things that happened with that. And it was just kind of I can't imagine. I always wondered what Joe thought when he came from winning it all at Louisville Butler to walking down here and seeing, the job he had in front of him. But it did not slow him down at all. He always had a great plan of developing the young kids. And I think Joe's strength is a strength that most great coaches have. Damon was going to be good in spite of me and Joe. Joe had the ability to take the average player and make him a great player, the bad player and make him an average player. And that's something that always stood out in his player development. But as those years come along, like Damon said, we were able to play in venues, in-state, out-of-state, that was really mind-boggling. Joe always said, if you live in this town and you coach in this town, you got to beat Bowling Green. And that started. That was when we first started here. That was just, man, we'll never beat Bowling Green, and eventually that came. Then before you know it, we were playing Mayfield, Paducah Tillman, Montgomery Bell Academy. We broke a 42 home game winning streak to Evansville Memorial in 1990. Shelby County, Indianapolis, Ben Davis. Bit off a little bit more than we could chew there, but we played them. But to see where we had came from to where we landed in such a short time it's just unbelievable. And again, you guys can read all the successes that Joe brought here, but I was able to be fortunate enough and still fortunate enough to go around the state. And when you think about Warren Central football, you instantly hear what's Coach Hood doing now and where's Damon Hood. So the committee obviously did a great job in selecting those two as it related to football. Joe won 131 games here, almost half of the all-time school wins. Coach of the Year, one of the only two-time Coach of the Years in the Courier-Journal. He was also, we left off here in 1986, Associated Press Coach of the Year. He served as president of the Kentucky High School Coaches Association, a 4-year term. He coached the Kentucky-Tennessee All-Star Game in 1992. And I'm almost sure that this will not be the last Hall of Fame that he'll be inducted into. So it's a great honor for me to be here tonight and to be a small part of his life and the Warren Central football life. And without any further ado, I recognize our next inductee, one of the most well-respected coaches in Kentucky football history, my friend, Joe Hood.
Thanks, Woody. I really appreciate that. And just to touch on what he was saying there, Warren Central went from single-A football in 1968, which was actually the first Warren Central football team, to 4A in 1978. So it did grow and grow in a hurry. And eventually, I think we finally caught up with the growth. But anyway, it was a quick trip there. One of the biggest honors tonight is to be able to sit on this stage with these outstanding athletes, these coaches, administrators that are up here. I had the good fortune of teaching here when all these athletes played, to get to see Clemette and SeSe play basketball and to see Kelly play fast pitch softball. And Kelly's one of the pioneers of fast pitch softball in the state of Kentucky, and they were just outstanding athletes. And, of course, the great honor to get to coach Damon, my son. And we hear that someone, and we did hear that a lot, and he's like a son to me, and I know, Mr. Hood, I know how proud you are of him, and the entire family is, and we're extremely proud of him too. I want to get back to Damon in just a minute when we get into football a little, but I also mention these other guys up here real quick, and that's Coach Lloyd. We literally taught together. We taught in the same classroom, and we team taught driver's ed for much of the time we were here, and we had a great time. And when things were low in the early years, he was, with his sense of humor, Clemette, he kept us going and kept us energized. And outstanding coach in his own right, and you'll get to hear from him in just a few minutes. And, of course, Coach Reilly down on the end, we taught together 1 year, right? I believe 2 years, maybe 2. And I don't know. I'll mention family in a second, but I'm so proud of him and what he's done here at Warren Central with the basketball program. He just took it to a totally different level. Outstanding person to go along with it. Has a great family, and most of them are here. But I'm so proud that my 2 sons got to play for you, and you were like a second father to them, and especially Joe. You got after him, and you made him like it, and I got after him. I got after him, and I made him like it, and together I think he's going to make it. And Mr. Crowe, Murley came here green, and he was literally green. And he came here green. Well, I came here in 1980 with long hair, cocky, thought I knew everything, thought I had all the answers. And I was in the building with him about a week, and I realized that I didn't have that. And he took me, and the mistake that he had made, the same year, he hired a guy named Curtis Turley. Yeah, that's the second time we've heard his name tonight, and I hope the last. But he hired a guy named Curtis Turley, and immediately he realized about a week into school that I've got both of these guys under this roof. I got to have some help. So he turned me over to Marvin Burgess, and Marvin took good care of me and watched after me. And Elaine, I know you're here, and proud to have you here. It's good to see you, and we think about Marvin often. We really do. I'm gonna have to get me some water. One other thing, while we were talking, Mr. Crowe had great insight into what took place and what needed to take place. And in the early 80s, before the middle schools, we had all the elementary schools around. They went through 8th grade, and they played their own football, and they played against each other. Well, as a direct result of what Mr. Crowe and Mr. Gover did, along with Mr. Hancock, who was involved with that as well, and all the other, who is here tonight, and all the other elementary school principals, we were able to form what we call the Dragon Flame, and brought all those 8th graders in to our campus here, and got to play as a team and play other counties surrounding schools. So that made quite a difference, and Mr. Crowe was very instrumental in taking care of that, as well as Mr. Hancock. And the coach of that team, and I'm so happy you're here tonight and proud that you came, was Art Schuba. I'd like to recognize Art. Thank you, Art. Just did phenomenal things with that, and Art's recently retired, and wish him the best. What to do? Just to thank a variety of people. Start with my lovely wife, the principal of this school, and the love of my life, and one of the people that got me going in the right direction and a path. I thank Lisa, and I'm so proud of you and your accomplishments and what you have done, and hope somewhere down the road here you can join me in retirement. I appreciate Joe being here, and Joe Curry is the senior at Lindsey Wilson, and so proud of him and what he accomplished while he was at high school, and then what he's doing in college. And all things go well, he's going to graduate next December from Lindsey Wilson, and hopefully he's going to teach and hopefully get into the coaching profession as well. And I appreciate him for that. And also, our youngest son, Chris, is not here tonight. He is a sophomore in college, and probably some of you have sophomores in college and have had sophomores in college. Well, he's road tripping. So where he is, nobody really knows. No, he's in Gatlinburg on retreat, and called just before we read this. I'm very proud of those boys and the boys and Lisa and what they have accomplished. One thing that I'm very proud of is that we've remained a Warren Central family. I taught here and coached here for 19 years, and I have enjoyed two parts of it. I got to coach here and teach here for 19 years, and then I got to stop, and I got to be a parent and a fan for the rest of the time, and I've had a great time with that. Enjoyed all the successes that the basketball teams have had, and enjoyed watching my boys grow up and watching them play. So that's been a treat for me, as well as the coaching, teaching here as well. Also, assistant coaches and players that are here, as well as all the others. I know, of course, Woody coached with us for years. Coach Dyer is here. Did I see? And, of course, Coach Schuba. But all the coaches that have coached here and helped us to get football to where it was. Woody, I don't know if everybody knew that, but most everybody does. Woody took over when I left and did a great job here, got to state semifinals, lost by about that much to St. X to go to the championship game. Did a super job, and he has turned out to be an outstanding coach in his own right, and is currently the head coach at Glasgow, and is doing great. And Coach Cox, who followed him, got to the state semifinals either his first or second year, I don't remember. And we now have an outstanding football coach. He's sort of like a Curtis Turley. He's everywhere. He's here and he's there in the principal's office constantly. But he's energetic. He's a go-getter, and he's bringing this football program to the level that it should be. Just recently won the regional championship this past year and did a great job, and I'm happy to see you here, Mike. And it's Coach Mike Rogers, along with some of his assistant coaches that are here as well. Thank you, Coach. Thanks for carrying on the tradition. As somebody mentioned, and I can't remember who, but as somebody mentioned, we have great fans here, always have. What took place in '83 was amazing. It was incredible, and we followed the team, and that was an outstanding experience. Fast forward through some different years to 2004 when Coach Reilly and the Dragons won the boys state championship, and in the meantime went on a run of 6 or 7 straight regional championships, just something unheard of. The fan support was there, and they were as good as anybody that went to the state tournament ever. And the same thing applies when they step on the football field or any athletic field that they play on. I had the distinct honor of getting to coach for the last 2 years on a sort of a voluntary basis. Got to coach the freshman team down at Allen County, Scottsville. That's the neighboring county. And my nephew, Bradley, who is here tonight, and I certainly appreciate Bradley coming, is the head coach there. They had an undefeated regular season last year. This past year, undefeated regular season, reached the state championship game at Western Kentucky University. And if you got an opportunity to be there the night that they brought, the crowd that they brought, and the excitement that they brought to this town that one night reminded me so much of what took place in 1983. It was unbelievable. They feel their side. And Bradley, I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate the honor of getting to coach with you for the past 2 years. Thank you. Thank you. And also another friend. I know I can't mention everybody, and I need to sit down. But another friend that we have counseled and consoled each other on numerous times, and he is now the new coach at South Warren. He was previously the coach at Greenwood. He got that program turned around, was able to go to the state semifinals last year, and lost by about that much to St. X. That's a trend, but lost about that much to St. X, and a good friend of mine, and I certainly appreciate him being here tonight, and that's Coach Mark Nelson. Thanks, Mark, for being here. I don't want to leave anybody out. I just want to say that to all the coaches and the players that have come through this program, and in any sport, at any level, and all the fans, remember that in the back of our program that we have here tonight is a poem written by Miss Thompson, or Miss Wade. I'm sorry, Miss Wade, Molly Wade. And it says, "Once a dragon," and that's certainly true there. Once a dragon, always a dragon. And again, I thank everyone that came tonight. I thank the committee. You made excellent choices. You're going to have some big decisions in the next few years if you remain, because there's some outstanding athletes and good coaches that have come through here. And I don't think you'll ever have trouble filling the desk up here. And it's good people. And I will close by saying, once a dragon, always a dragon. That's very true. And I will always be proud, like I always have, to be a dragon. Thank you.
I'm fortunate enough to be able to do double duty at this time. When I found out about this honor to introduce this next inductee, I had to do some thinking. What he's meant to me over the years. I came here, he was an assistant football coach under Dale Lindsey. Of course, he was basketball coach, baseball coach. Previously, he coached boys basketball at Warren Central before being girls basketball coach. My senior year, my mom and stepdad and sister moved to Hopkinsville. So in the fall, I was fortunate enough to stay here and go to finish my senior year at Warren Central. Also, Bobby Houck mentioned earlier, Bobby Houck let me live in his basement my senior year. But after practice, a lot of times, Vanous would say, Sue Ellen's cooking fried chicken tonight. Y'all come over? Okay. So they also became my adopted family during my senior year here. Sue Ellen couldn't be here tonight. She's not feeling well. But, I really got to know him. I remember, I think we were in Owensboro. I was not a gifted athlete. I played football for my freshman, sophomore years, hurt my back, didn't play. But right away, Vanous asked me to be his basketball manager. I didn't know. I knew a little bit what I was going to get into, but not only did I do manager and wash, keep the scorebook, but I got to do practice drills. And Clemette can probably remember that too. And I'm surprised Clemette probably didn't remember all the times I got her in trouble, because if you remember running that drill, 3-on-2 drill, where was I? I was on the block. And Clemette, full head of steam. What did I do? Step over like that. Charge. Vanous would get so mad at her. And then just being able to be with him. Being able to broadcast that state championship game, being able to go with him on very good baseball coach, go to the regionals and semifinals a few times, and just to be with his family. Just a great guy. Riding on the bus. When I was in high school, I got to sit up front with Vanous, and like Clemette said, it's great. You win. But if they did not lose, it was like this. Right, Clemette? You did not say a word until you heard that famous laugh. Then once you heard that laugh up front, the back of the bus knew it was okay. And another dear friend, I know he was mentioned earlier, is Marvin Burgess. Marvin would ride with us up front of the bus. John Perwin. You talk about a treat. As a student, being around guys like that and hear them, and then get to be involved in some of the card games on the bus going to a game. We would play card. These bread baskets, that they'd carry loaves of bread in. And Jimmy Renault can attest to that. Jimmy drove the bus for many years. I know Jimmy's here tonight. He'd look over his shoulder. He'd take one look, and he'd just keep driving. And Vanous would have this tray out, and that was his way of relaxing. We'd sit there, and he'd just shuffle cards, get closer to where we're going, get put up, we got serious. But, he got to be kind of like a father figure to me, kind of took me under my wing. Fortunately, I don't think he had to use that brake on that Ford Fairmont driver's ed class. If I remember, it was a Ford Fairmont. Yeah, barely a Fairmont, and barely a Ford, I think, at that. But driver's ed, I had him first period, and I was glad. Where was our first stop? Hardee's. That was when Hardee's was just right over here. I look back. He'd sit in the back sometimes. I say, Coach, breakfast? Yep. So we'd head over to Hardee's, get breakfast. Then we'd have a few minutes to drive. But I guess another story about Vanous. We go to Owensboro, playing in the Owensboro Invitational Tournament. We're staying at the Holiday Inn. Didn't play well, and we'd go on the road, and we're staying at hotels. What did we do? We paced. I walked, I don't know how many miles Vanous and I would walk. Didn't play well, and had this big game against Webster County coming up, or a team like that. What are we going to do? Clemette gets sick, or one of the other players is hurt. He's just, I'm the only one, I was fortunate enough, I was the only one who could walk with Vanous. No one else knew to walk with Vanous, but I could walk with Vanous we would lap that hotel. I mean, we would lap it, walk, walk, walk. He'd have that head down, and just none of the assistant coaches, but I was fortunate enough to be the one that I got to walk around with him. So it's with great pleasure, a multi-coach here, that I recognize Mr. Vanous Lloyd into the Warren Central Athletic Hall of Fame.
Noticed all the presenters has been crying except Scott.
Sorry, Coach. I'm sorry, Coach.
First of all, I'd like to introduce the pride of my family, my two daughters, Carmen and Kelly. Would y'all please stand up? I'm not divorced. My wife has had knee surgery 2 years ago and knee replacement, and she's had 3 surgeries on the same knee, and she's still not doing good. So she's afraid of the ice in this situation, and she's just staying at home. I'm glad somebody, Jimmy, said something about the bus drivers, because without y'all, we couldn't go and get back, because I didn't know where we was going when I first started coaching. Tim Murley was right. He didn't know anything. And just think how far we've come. At Warren County Schools, he's the superintendent now. The good one on Tim, we was playing Monroe County, and my center fielder was Chris Jewell. And Chris come in and he said, Coach Lloyd, he said, we got a guy in center field. And said, he's talking bad to us. I said, he's what? He said, he's talking bad to us. And I said, what do you mean bad? He said, you know them bad words. And I said, oh, Chris. He said, no, about that time left fielder and right fielder come in. Said, he's right, Coach. He said, he's talking bad. I said, well, I'll go out there with you. We'll get this settled. So I went out to center field. I almost got to the fence, and there was Tim Murley and his boys in the back of the pickup truck, razzing my own team. Oh, man. We did it. I tell you what, Joe, I don't think he'd ever made it without us. You know that. But he has made it, and Tim, congratulations. I'm proud for you. I'm glad I know you. I'm glad you're doing the job you're doing today. Really proud of you. I go back a long time with Warren Central Athletics. Go back to the 74, 75 year. First person I met, and I'm still a little bit scared of him, is David Crowe. But I got to know David, and he was such a good friend. After I've been there a few years, I knew his actions. So when he was in a bad mood, I'd go by the office every morning before bus duty, 7:30 every morning, parking lot duty. And if David was in a good mood, I'd stand there and talk to him. We'd laugh and joke, have a good time. If he wasn't, something had happened, he wasn't in a very good mood, I'd just keep on walking. Say, hi, Mr. Crowe, I'll see you in a little while. But he's a great friend. I met Mr. Jerry Bush when I first come to Central. Mr. Marvin Burgess, Mr. Butch Kenny, Henry Resch was the principal. He told me 2 years before that I had a job at Warren Central. Well, somehow I didn't get it. So I had to work at Holly Manufacturing for 6 months, made more money in 6 months. And I made a whole year at teaching, coaching. But I was in hospital, just had surgery. And right before that, about 2 weeks before that, I went out to the Roundhouse back in those days to eat. And lo and behold, the guy that owned it was the board chairman at the time, Mr. Donnie Wheeler. And he said, I'd played softball for him before when he was our sponsor. And he said, what are you doing now? And I told him, and he said, well, don't you want to coach in Warren County and teach in Warren County? I said, I've been trying to get here for 2 years, Donnie. He said, give me a little time. I said, okay. And so, but that right after Christmas, I had surgery, and the school principal at the time from Rockville, from Alvaton, was Mr. Robert Morgan. And he called me while I was in the hospital. He said, would you like to teach and coach out here? Said, our science teacher and coach is leaving to be principal, who later on, one of my favorite people, Mr. Everett Lacer, become principal at Rockville. And I said, I sure would. But I said, I'm going to be in the hospital another day. He said, can you come out here and interview? I said, you mean the day I get out of the hospital? Because I was bandaged up everywhere, and it wasn't a very good time, I'll put it that way. And he said, yeah, I sure would like to talk to you. Well, I was hired the next day. And then I worked a year and a half there, and I come up, Butch Kenny was the boys coach here at the time, and I'd come up and see what he'd do. Then I'd take it back to Alvaton, and I'd teach our boys basketball team the same plays that Butch run. So you had to get to know them, but that's where I met David and Jerry, Marvin, Everett, pretty close people back in those days, or mid-70s. And then I got first week of school. Principal was Mr. Rashian, and he come up to me and he said, Coach Lloyd, have you ever coached girls before? And I said, yes, sir. I said, I coached girls track out at Alvaton. He said, you're it. I said, what do you mean I'm it? He said, they're starting girls basketball this year, and you're it. I said, I'm it. He said, you're the head coach, the only coach. And I said, well, Mr. Ash, I don't know. He said, you're it. He said, you practice 6 period, 45 minutes a day, and then they go home. Our first year, Clemette, 45 minutes. You would have loved that. So we did that year, practiced 45 minutes, didn't have assistant. I was still the boys' freshman coach. Well, the next year I started helping Dale in football. And Barry Dyer, Rick White was the other 2 assistants. And I was still the boys' freshman coach, girls' basketball coach, and boys' basketball coach. And that went on for a couple years. And then I become just the girls' coach. And I coached football for 4 years. And then I become girls' coach, head baseball coach. And that's when Mr. Crowe come up to me and he said, I've got us a football coach, a new football coach that just won the state tournament I said, well, I want to meet him. He said, you'll meet him today. He said, I'm taking him out to the regional finals. We was playing Bowling Green High in the regional finals in baseball. They just beat us 24-2 in the district finals. We didn't have any pitching. But we could beat other teams, but we couldn't beat them at that time. And I said, Mr. Crowe, don't take him. Don't take him. He said, why? I said, well, he might not come down here if you take him to watch us play baseball today. But anyway, Joe come down. I got to meet him. We talked that day. Of course, Mr. Crowe hired him. And start of the story, he was as good a person or better than he was a coach. We become just like brothers. I would trust him with anything in my life today. And he was such a good friend that, of course, we talked every morning, made coffee, talked about the school day. Nobody knows this, but Joe was really assistant coach on my basketball team, girls. He was a head of scouting. Every time we went scouting, Joe went with me. Of course, we had another fellow that went a lot named David Bach. He used to be football coach here too. I'm not going to tell you what they scouted, but they was with me every those times. But we just had a great time. I mean, this was family. Players that played for us, and for me especially, managers, statisticians, filmers. They had everything they wanted. Mr. Crowe made everything first class. Nothing was second class. Don't let him fool you. Clemette and Melinda Carlson had him wrapped around his finger. They could do anything they wanted to. Some things I didn't even know about. Clem had to tell me a few things that I didn't know about. But I tell you what, it's been a joy. All these years, go through all these students that come through Warren Central, hoping they would be successful later, besides being successful when they were here. And we got doctors, lawyers, and you know the guy he was talking about, Mr. Kenny Darnell, he's married to my cousin. So he is talking about a person just exactly the way he was talking. Outstanding, outstanding. And I just had a wonderful time here. It was like family. Great. But I'll tell you a little bit, baseball, I don't want to leave these people out, because without them, I couldn't have done what I did. Gary White was my first assistant. I knew I was in trouble the first day when he said, hey, Vanous. Of course, I helped him and Butch in basketball. Gary was assistant basketball. He said, I'm going, Vernon McDaniels, who was a teacher here at the time, he said, he wants to help us today. Said, I'm going to let him hit the flies, and I'm going to hit the grounders, the rollers. I said, you're going to hit what? He said, rollers. I said, you mean ground balls? He said, yeah, you know what I'm talking about. I knew I was in trouble right away. But Gary was my first assistant. Then I had Jeff Edwards. Jeff, this was he was first base coach. I don't think he ever hit a fun goal. And when he come to practice, he was in dugout, laid out, back, relaxed. And Jeff was first base coach like this. That's all he did. He never said nothing. One of the kids asked me last night, said, Coach, did Coach Edwards know the signals? He said he never said nothing. I said, Coach Edwards, Just don't pay attention to him. Just, round the base on your own. Look. But Jeff was a heck of a guy. He went on to become coach at Russellville High School. Now, the last time I heard from him, he still was AD at Jeffersontown, Louisville. I don't know if he's still there or not, but that's where he was last time. David Eccles helped me one year. He was coach at Alvaton. And I didn't have any assistants, and he'd come up and help me one year. David Beckner was assistant. And my last few years, Coach Art Chuba, who's here tonight, and Rick Alfonso was my two assistants. Complete opposite. Art was serious. Everything's going to be down to the line. Rick is the wildest man I ever seen on the baseball game. I thought he was going to have a heart attack every time I seen him coach. I had a nephew come down from Maine, and I said, now, don't get near the fence. He's 16 years old. I said, don't get near the fence. He said, why? I said, that coach is wild. He said, oh, no, he's not that way. I said, Eric, down here, I said, you've been in Maine. I said, he's wild. Well, about the fourth inning, I don't know if it was Derek or somebody made an error, and he come over and grabbed the bat, and Eric was sitting right in front of him. He wore that screen out with that bat, hitting it back and forth, and I looked up, and Eric had backed up all the way to the screen, and his eyes was that big around, he's scared to death. But I had some good times with baseball. I think the 87 team, we'd won the state tournament, but our best pitcher, the week to go in the season, slid in second base and broke a leg. And he just beat Bowling Green 10-1 the day before. And then we got beat by Owensboro to go to the Final Four. We were the last two teams. Owensboro won the state tournament that year, winning 22-2 and 24-2. So I think we could have probably won it that year. But that was a good year to retire on from baseball. And football, I really enjoyed coaching that the 4 years I did. Dale Lindsay was excellent. I known him from Bowling Green. We went up to Cleveland Browns, camped for 4 days, practiced with the Cleveland Browns, ate with the Cleveland Browns. Of course, Dale had played for them for 10 years, and talked to their head coach. Of course, I was a country boy. I didn't know anything about it. And boy, that was amazing. You go through the food line at the camp, they'd have a ribeye and a prime rib. They didn't ask you, they threw it on the plate. And then they'd have 4 or 5 vegetables, desserts, salad bar. It was my kind of place. And I really enjoyed it. And I remember one year, first year we ever beat Bowling Green. Of course, I'll get to it later, but I'm a graduate of Bowling Green. But I went here 10 years till they made us go to Bowling Green. And we was playing Bowling Green, and Rusty Dyer, a kid by the name of Rusty Dyer, scored 17 points. He was a kicker, Damon. He was a tailback, Damon. He was a free safety, played free safety for me. And he scored all 17 points. And we beat Bowling Green High 17-14. And that was the happiest I ever was coaching football because we beat Bowling Green mainly. That's the main thing. And then let's get to basketball. When I was first started, of course, 45 minutes. Second year, they hired my first assistant coach at Warren Central. Boy, I was proud I finally got assistant coach. Mr. Crowe said, I got you assistant coach. I said, oh, good. He said, it's Marvin Burgess. Well, Marvin and I had agreed that I would help him in football if Marvin could help me in basketball. They didn't know about that yet, but we'd been out at his house a few times and we agreed on that. But Marvin was one of a kind. Special friend. Always. He's gone now, but he was one of the funniest people I've ever been around. I'll never forget him. The first year, me and Merv, we decided these new suits was on. You know, bell bottoms, canley, no ties, you know, coats. Well, Merv gets one he's lost some weight. And he gets one that's tight, or pretty tight, and one that's pretty large in case he gains some more weight back. So we get to the district tournament, 76. Never won nothing, Warren Central. Always was. And we got beat by Bowling Green, but 25 and 27 in regular season. But they just had one good player. And she scored the majority of their points. Well, the day of the game, Mr. Kenny Ralston calls me from Bowling Green, assistant principal. Hey, Vanous, he said, we know you're a graduate of Bowling Green, and we're having pep rally over here, getting ready for y'all. We'd like for you to come over and say the last few words. Well, I told him the last few words right then, but he hung up the phone before I could get them all out. And so I had a girl by the name of Gretchen Britt, quickest player I ever coached. And I told Gretchen, I said, Gretchen, you're one-on-one with her. I said, I don't want her to touch the basketball. I said, if she goes and gets a drink of water, I said, you're with her. Do you understand that? Yes, sir, Coach Lloyd. I understand it. Well, we played a boxing one on them that night. We beat them about 12 or 16. Well, they called a timeout with about 2 minutes to go, and I was looking around for Gretchen. Couldn't find her. And she was standing there just staring outside the huddle. I said, Gretchen, what are you doing? She said, I'm waiting to see if our girl goes get some drink water. So I knew I had the right one then, Todd. And got to the final game, and we won. Well, Merv that night was wearing his big laser suit, a little bit loose, on him. But after the game, I looked up, and there in a circle at mid-court, we had parents and Merv, and they were going around. And I told Mr. Crowe, I said, Mr. Crowe, look out there. Merv was jumping up with Gretchen's mother, who was about that tall. And when he jumped up, his pants would come down, about right there. And then he'd pull them up. They did that for 5 minutes. And I mean, tears was coming out of my eyes. And he had tales. He had some war stories that was unbelievable. I'd get on the bus and I'd cry all the way there. But he was a great person, one I loved dearly. And Jerry attests to this, David attests to this. And he had a little temper. Matter of fact, one time I called a timeout because I was mad at this referee because this girl from Gamaya at that time was a high school, would not get out in 3 seconds. She'd stay in the paint on offense and just stand there, and I started counting for the official. 1 1,000, 2 1,000. I got to 10. She still hadn't moved. And the official wouldn't call anything until I slammed my foot in the floor and said something. He called something then. Boom. Called it T. I said, give me a timeout. He gave me a timeout, and I said, Merv, go ask that gentleman politely, would he please watch that girl in the middle, in the paint, and please call 3 seconds every once in a while. Well, I turned around back to the huddle to talk to the girls. The referee seen Merv coming. Referee walks all the way to the end of the floor. Merv follows him, step for step, all the way. And of course, the kids is telling me, Coach, look, Coach, look, Coach, Burgess, Coach. I looked, he got all the way down there. And of course, Marvin didn't ask him politely. And he probably said something, but anyway, the official said, if you touch that floor again, it's going to be another technical. Marvin walked outside the floor all the way down to the bench. And he got down, they didn't get a technical on him. I said, what'd you say to him, Merv? He said, you don't want to know. That's all he said. But he was a funny individual. And Barry has got some stories on him too. I'm sure Mr. Crowe does and Jerry does. He was quite an individual. And then in 1977 we won the district title. And then in 1980, remember that, Clemette? Unbelievable. We'd played Allen County, Scottsville. They'd won the LIT that year, which is the biggest tournament in Kentucky besides the state tournament. And Allen County had won the LIT. They beat us 35 2 weeks before the regional tournament. And we had a guard that had hurt her knee, and the doctor told me that she couldn't play but one half. So we played her the first half and then set her out the second half. Well, we was just down 6 at halftime, and so they blowed us out in the second half. We didn't have much bench that year either. And so I remember we was feeling all bad about it, but I wasn't feeling too bad because I knew that with that guard in there, we played them pretty tough. But Clem come by and he said, don't worry about it, Vanous. He said, it happens to all of us. They were just that much better than y'all, just blew you away. I said, sure did, Clem. Said, don't make it feel any better. And so, sure enough, 2 weeks, we get to the final. They put our game on a Saturday afternoon where the boys played at Saturday night at Dental. And we played Allen County, Scottsville in the finals of the regional. I think Bird hit 7 straight shots that night as a freshman. Best game she had all year. You couldn't have played any better than she played that game. And Clemette had her usual, probably 25 points and 10 assists and no turnovers. She could play the game, people. She's the best women's basketball player, and I've watched it a lot of years that I ever seen that could play the whole game. I'm not talking about offense. I'm not talking about defense. I'm talking about all of it. She played it all. Anything you asked of her. I felt sorry for her 2 times while she was here. Only 2 times. But one time, I got on her enough that I was crying. She was crying. And of course, my backup, Yvette, was almost crying because we couldn't get her to shoot the basketball. And we was getting beat because she wouldn't shoot it. She wanted the rest of them to score. She wanted to be part of the team. I said, honey, you can be part of the team, but shoot the ball more, or I ain't going to play you. That's very simple. And the only other time is like she said, boy, she got in trouble with some teacher. Lordy mercy. That's the maddest mama I've ever seen in my life. Yvette comes storming through my dressing room door. We need to talk. I thought I'd done something wrong. I was kind of scared. And she said, it's Clemette. She showed disrespect to this teacher. And something's got to be done. So I said, well, I got her in there first before Clemette got there. I said, well, what do you think we ought to do? We ought to sit her out a game, teach her a lesson. I said, I said, now, Yvette, just don't get crazy. I said, let's relax a little bit. I said, what about a half a game? No, full game. You better back me up, too. I said, deal's done. We did. She had to sit out a game. And that was the only time that I ever heard a teacher say a word that was even close to bad about Clemette Haskins. She was first class, always was, player, person, anything you want to deal with, she was that. She had a great mother and daddy that I used to watch play. I used to watch Clem play. And I'm going to tell y'all a secret. I'm going to tell you how we got Clemette. Well, I was up the boys' state tournament with Butch Kenny and Gary Watt. And Clem was up there. And he come over and he said, hi, Vanous. I said, how you doing, Clem? He said, I've got a girl that plays pretty good ball. I'm going to be moving back to Bowling Green. And said, knowing Clem, he never bragged nothing. I never seen him brag about anything. He's one of the greatest players I ever seen play. And he never bragged about anything, so I knew then she was real good. I didn't have to ask any more questions about her ability. And he said, where should I move to? I said, it's only one place. He said, where's that? I said, Warren Central District. He said, Warren Central District? Yes, sir. He said, well, who coaches there? I said, I do. And that's how it started. Clemette played for a couple of Trays 1 year, and then she started playing for us in the 8th grade as an 8th grader, one of the few ones. And, of course, her teammate come with her. What a wild experience. If you don't know Melinda Carlson, people, you are missing some kind of woman. I remember the first year she went by the bleachers, 8th grade. She looked at Mr. Crowe. Mr. Crowe was sitting up there. She said, hi, Crowe. Boy, I grabbed her by the arm. I tucked her inside them doors. I said, Melinda, let me tell you something. I don't know what you do out coming Trace. But I said, that's Mr. Crowe to you. And if you ever say that again in my presence, you're going to be in big trouble. Of course, she was just young. She didn't know what she was really doing at the time. I said, you go out there and you apologize to her. And she did, and she cried a little bit, of course, when she did. But you never did know what was going to come out of Melinda's mouth or where she was thinking about. But she went from a 8th grader who couldn't chew and play basketball, chew gum and play basketball, to a dadgone good player by the time she got to be a senior. She's all-state. But I remember she was a freshman. We was going to Franklin Simpson. And she looked up and she said, hey, Coach Lloyd, we're going to play in the capital of Kentucky. I looked at her and I said, I looked at Clemette. Clemette said, she's just shaking her head. And I said, Clemette, I said, I know she's young. She said, she's a dizzy broad, Coach Lloyd. That was her exact words. I remember them well. Dizzy broad. And then it's amazing. I got some stories I can't tell. A lot of stories that, make me very proud to be their coach. And all the players that played under me here at Warren Central. Our last year that we went to state tournament was '88. I remember when I was going to retire in '94, Mr. Crowe said, who do you think we ought to get? I said, we already have him here. He said, who's that? I said, Todd Stewart. And he said, you really think he'd do a good job? I said, I think he'd do an excellent job. So he went to Todd. Todd agreed to it. The next year, about halfway through the season, I get a knock on my door. Driver's ed, teaching driver's ed. It's Todd. He says, come out here a minute. I come out there. He said, thanks a lot. Just turned around and left. But SeSe, after you got there, he never did come and say, thanks a lot after that. It's okay then. But that group I left wasn't the best ball players, I had to say. But Mr. Crowe knows we started in '74, '75. The first practice, I didn't know whether girls knew anything about basketball or not. The first practice, we was working on basic fundamentals. And this girl accidentally kicked the ball, hit me right between the eyes, broke my glasses, started bawling and run to the restroom and wouldn't come out. Couldn't get her out. I didn't see that girl for 2 days. She left school, and I had her at Alvaton, and I kept looking. She's absent. And I tried to talk her. She said, I can't play, Coach Lloyd. I done embarrassed you to death. I said, you didn't embarrass me. I said, you was just trying. That was my first day on the job. Cost me a few dollars for getting another pair of glasses, and learned that women was going to be a little different than men was when you coached them. And like I said, I'm going to tell you a story about teaching, and I'll be done. But Gary Watt and I were real close friends. He was assistant principal here. Later on, we started out coaching together. He taught psychology. Today, we would be fired. Mr. Murley would come and get us himself. But he had this psychology class, and we thought up that we would go out, and I would come in and act like I was mad. Marvin had a shooting pistol that was blanks. You could fire it away. And Gary then would ask the students after I left, what I was wearing, what I looked like. Some way it was due to psychology. I never did pick it up, but Gary is in Gary's mind. So I come through the door when I got back from the state tournament, and I walked straight to that door and had that starting pistol in my pocket. Opened the door and I said, walked in, I said, Mr. Watt, I said, I'm mad. I said, I'm fixing to kill you. He said, now, Coach Lloyd, we need to go outside and talk. I said, no, it's too late to talk. I said, you was with my wife the whole time I was gone to the state tournament. And I just pulled that gun and I fired off 2 rounds. Gary fell on the desk, fell on the floor, and I went out the door. Well, Rusty Dyer, Jane Dyer, and a few of them was in there. And they thought we was kidding at first, and then I looked and Rusty was crying, Jane was crying. And I knew we had them. Well, I was wearing khaki pants, navy top, no glasses. Well, when they filled out papers to tell what I was wearing blue jeans, white T-shirt, sunglasses, and a baseball hat. We'd be fired today, wouldn't we, Mr. Merrill? As soon as the gun went off. And like Curtis Turley, Tim, when he come, the basketball program turned around. Joe and Curtis and I, we were together everywhere. After that, we was just like brothers, all three of us. But he did us a favor, and I want to tell you about it. Curtis thought you ought to make more money than we was making. And Curtis was not happy with what the money we was making. So he was going to go to the board. So he went to the board and he talked to the superintendent at the time. And he took a job in Graves County because the superintendent wasn't up to pay. As you remember, Joe, we got a raise right after that. Curtis went on. He's been everywhere. He's at now Martha Lane Collins High School, coaching for the 50th year, I think. But he was a good one, and he started a basketball tradition at that time here that got better and better and better. And Tim, like Joe said, could be prouder of anybody. He's not only a great coach, he's a great individual person. But if it hadn't been for me, he would never done this. Because back in 1996 or 97, 99, no, I wasn't here in 99, 98. I come in to Tim and I said, Tim, stick it out. You'll get some players. I said, they'll be here sooner or later. I said, just stick it out. But you got to do something about your scheduling. Because he was getting killed. I mean, people was killing him. Well, he softened it up till he got some players. He started winning a few games. And now he plays as good a schedule as anybody in the state of Kentucky or better. So they're ready. When they're getting the tournament play, they're ready to play. And if I'd had a son, I sure wish they would have played for Coach Hood or Coach Tim Reilly, Coach Stewart, a bunch of coaches that we had here. And if I'd ever wanted to work for somebody else again, this man right here, I'd go to war for it right there. He's that special. AD never had to worry about money. I don't know, he probably did. I didn't. We had to turn in a budget. But he always had the money for us to go trips. First class. Nothing second class about it. And he was always a good friend, even when he was down and in the dumps. So thank y'all. Appreciate y'all coming.
Never at a loss for words, I can promise you that. Another thing, I've been fortunate over my time, not only with Joe, but Vanous. If Vanous will probably remember, after Clemette moved on, he had a few years there where he didn't get to the state tournament. Well, I got to broadcast all the girls' state tournaments here at Diddle Arena. First guy I called was Vanous. You want to help me? What time? So I'd tell him, let me see if I can get out of school. And he'd find a way to come help me. Joe, after he retired, I don't know how many years, but he helped me broadcast high school football games for many years. And those two are a treat. They know a lot about what they're talking about, despite the front they may put on for you. Our next inductee here, special lady. I kind of remember back in the late 80s, they had what they called Little League Softball. I used to do some umpiring back in the 80s during the summer just to kind of fill in. And I remember they come to me and says, come umpire this Little League softball game. I said, nothing to it. Guess who was throwing? They said, there's this little left-handed girl. And I come to find out later on, it's Kelly. And I'm going, that wasn't too bad, the first pitch or two. And the next thing I know, she's throwing rockets, Little League softball. She's throwing it off. They were played out at Basil Griffin Park. They played on the Little League baseball field. And so they're pitching mound. And I'm going, gosh, this girl's bringing it, And the batters would just stand there like this. And Chuck probably remembers. There's not many that could hit off Kelly. And even as she got older and started playing high school softball. And fortunately, she was one of those special players that comes along. And just a good kid. She worked hard at it. And, of course, missed softball in 1995. And to induct Kelly Johnson Reynolds into this year's Hall of Fame, it's her dad, Chuck Johnson.
First off, I'd just like to say that I want to congratulate all these inductees here tonight on this stage, and I mean it from the bottom of my heart. It's a privilege and an honor to be on the same stage with you. I really do. I really mean that. I want to start off by, I've had all kind of coaching on what I was going to say and what I was going to do. My daughter and my wife told me, said, now, Dad, don't get up there and ramble like some old man. Said, you know how you are. You get to rambling, you don't know when to shut up. So I'll get that figured out because I got my cheat sheet here. I've wrote everything out. As you can see, 3 pieces of paper. But there's only one problem. I never was good at writing, and I can't hardly even read what I wrote. So I'll leave that there and maybe get to use some of it. I want to tell you a story about Vanous Lloyd before I get to the special lady. A lot of you don't know this, and Clemette, you mentioned Vanous' voice a while ago, and you're going to find this real interesting. Back in about 1959, Vanous, 1960, when as some of you remember, the old elementary school used to be right back here. Well, Vanous and I went to the old elementary school back here. We had a talent contest one time, and it was a singing contest. And myself, David Mahaney, and Vanous Lloyd had a trio. But now we won the talent contest. That was a good thing about it. We won. And the song we sang, Love Potion Number 9. You remember that? We'll never forget that. Vanous and I go back a long way. I was also in the annexation. I think we left here in '63. We both went to Bowling Green High to finish up. And I'll have to say, though, my heart's always been here at Warren Central. It always has. As far as this next inductee, I know her personally. I've seen a lot of good work ethics out of her. I remember she started out playing softball. She's around 8 years old. She worked hard at it. But now she didn't really start doing any kind of pitching until she was about 11 years old. And that's when we ended up down in Florida. She had on the Little League program, as Scott mentioned. Was playing in the semifinals of the Southeast Regional to get to the Little League World Series. Of course, we eventually lost to Naples, Florida. But we noticed down there, their pitching was pretty dominant. So when Kelly got back, she said, Dad, I want to be a pitcher. She said, what does it take? I said, well, it takes what your grandmother had. Now, my mother, her grandmother, she played softball, and Vanous gave me orders when we walked in, and I said, don't you dare take any credit for your daughter being the pitcher she was. Your grandmother gets that, or my mother gets it. Said, we know the type of pitcher she was. Mother was an excellent pitcher. She was a state champ back in the late 40s and early 50s. She was a good pitcher. Won, I think, 2 or 3 championships, as a matter of fact. So I guess I can owe a whole lot of that to her grandmother. I feel like I had a little part. I was a halfway decent pitcher, but I think Kelly, I guess the old saying goes, it's in her genes. It's in our genes. So she's, I guess my mother started off, so that's where it began. She played a lot of travel ball. She worked hard, and I remember, and it's still on the side of our house today. I have a square. It's about a 12-inch square, basically a strike zone. And I told her, I said, when she first started, I said, honey, I want you to go out there every day. And I stepped off about 40 feet. That's what they throwed at the time. And I said, I want you to go out and throw every day. Every day. She said, every day? I said, every day. I said, I want you to practice. She said, and then what? I said, I want you to practice some more. And after that, I want you to practice some more, constantly. So here she was. Every day she would go outside. I could hear her out there, bang, offside of the house, bang, bang, bang. And I remember some of the neighbors would come to the windows and they'd look out and like, what's that noise? What are they trying to do, tear the house down over there? But it was Kelly out there throwing. And then she kind of graduated up a little bit, and I started catching her. Because honestly, I come home one day from work, and I seen her throw about 15 pitches, and every one of them was around in that circle. And I knew then that she's kind of getting the idea of what I wanted her to do. She's seen us play. And I know Vanous and I, we cut our teeth on fast pitch years ago. She's seen us play. When she was a little girl, she'd go to the ballpark with me, be in the dugout sometimes, and I'd see her over sometimes mimicking of what I would do. And I was hoping then, I said, well, maybe there's hope. But I remember when she graduated up a little bit, and she said, Dad, I want you to catch me. So I'd go into the backyard, and she would throw, and I would catch. And one time, I'll never forget it, she was starting to work on a drop ball. No problem. I remember I was squatted down there with my catcher's mitt. She started throwing the drop ball. It got working pretty good. And she said, Dad, I'm going to throw one harder. I said, let her go. Well, she threw it hard, and the thing bounced on the ground and hit me right on my left shin. You remember that day? She come over, she run, and I went to the ground, and I grew another softball on this left leg. And she come over and she had tears in her eyes. She looked down, she said, Daddy, you all right? And I looked up at her, and I said, no. Because, I was hurting. And I told her then, I said, I'll be all right. Everything's going to be fine. But anyway, Kelly had a good career. She worked hard at it. She, like I say, was named Miss Kentucky Softball at 95, which was a good year under the coaching of Coach Stewart there and assistant coach Stan Murphy. I had an opportunity to be on as just a helper coach, but it was a great year of the things that Kelly's accomplished. And she accomplished most of what she did herself. She was her own motivator. I never had to tell her very much to go out and work, to go out and practice. When other girls was out doing things and running around, Kelly was working on her pitching. There was a few times, though, I actually had to replace the gutters on that side of the house where the square was because she couldn't keep her ball from going real high. And, of course, anybody throws from, if you're familiar with pitching, throwing from the left-hand side, that ball does a whole lot different thing than it does from the right side. And that ball would move totally, totally different. She spent about 4 years down at Club K, down in Nashville, Tennessee, and she had an excellent teacher, and it was her personal teacher. Her name was Sherry Kemp. Sherry Kemp now is the women's professional fast pitch softball league president. It's nationally known. They've got several teams playing in the game now, and actually girls are getting drafted after college as good enough ball players to go play women's professional softball. Kelly also in 2002 she was honored by being named to the Kentucky Softball Coaches Association Hall of Fame in Lexington, and I thought that was a big honor for her. Of course, later in there was a little thing that come along, and a certain guy in her early career there in high school, named Johnson Reynolds. I remember a lot of times Jason would come to the ball games to watch the ball games. He'd be standing back there looking through the fence sometime, and I'd tell Kelly, I said, Kelly, just forget he's even here. Don't even look at him because he'll get you tore up. And I know she had an excellent catcher in Jamie Coomer, and Jamie would actually call timeout. She'd look at me and go, Coach, what's the problem? She'd call timeout, walk out there and tell her, say, Kelly, you've got to take your eyes off of Jason. Say, we know he's here, but just keep your eyes off of him so you can throw this game. Well, Jamie would finally get her attention enough that she'd get back in the game and do it. Kelly had a short college career. She had a good college career while she was there. She got a scholarship, like I say, to Middle Tennessee State University. Her freshman year, she made all-conference team. But unfortunately, she suffered a shoulder injury, had to have surgery, came back here to Western to finish up her career at Western. And, well, of course, she didn't play any softball. We got her degree here, her master's, rank 1, and coached here at Central for a few years and was also assistant coach here at Central. And she's now, like I say, teaches here, the special education department head, having a good career here at Warren Central. I don't want to talk too long because, like I say, I'll get to rambling, and my daughter and my wife will be all over me after this is over and say, "Dad, you got up there and rambled." But she's blessed us, Betty and I, with two wonderful grandkids. And of course, Jason, I love Jason to death. I kid with him all the time. I love him to death. They've got a little girl, Emily, Suzanne. And by the way, she's 7 years old, and she's off to a pretty good start in softball. Of course, she's being coached by her mommy during the summer. She's an excellent gymnast, and they have a little boy, Ethan Stewart. And by the way, he is, he's just 100% pure little boy. That's what he is. He's a handful sometimes. But I appreciate this opportunity to get to introduce her. It means something to me. It's special to me. She's been an inspiration to me in my life because Kelly never seen a time where there was a quitting point. And I'll never forget in the state tournament when we finally got to go to the state tournament in '95 when after the game we had lost the game, and I'll never forget what Todd said. We found a little shady spot over off the ball field, and what Todd told those girls, he said, "Girls, I'm just as proud of you if we'd have never been here at the state tournament." And he said, "There is a tomorrow, and you have a future. Go out and make the best of it." And Todd, I appreciate that. I'll never forget those words. It meant a lot to those girls. So at this time, I'd like to introduce to you, she was known by her teammates and fellow players as Chucky, but most important, she's known by me, by my little girl, my daughter, Kelly Johnson Reynolds.
Well, I'd like to first start off as saying thank you, and it is such an honor to be up here with these other guests. They are all wonderful people. As I look down the line, so many of them have meant so much to me through the years, and it's just very important to me. And I thank them. I thank all of you. It's an honor to be up here tonight. I'd like to start off by thanking my family. My dad is my number one supporter, as if you couldn't tell. My mom was always there. I remember one time we were in J-Town, and it was travel ball, and I had stunk it up. I mean, it was really bad. And Jason was there, and my father-in-law, he had talked him into coming up there to Louisville and said, "Oh, come on, I want you to see my girlfriend. She can pitch." Well, that was out the door because it wasn't good. I think I threw one over the backstop. A girl hit a home run. I mean, it was just bad. And I had a coach tell me, he said, you won't make it. You need to work harder. You won't make it. And my mom, she's saying, "Chuck, do something about that. That's going to hurt her feelings." And my dad said, "No, she'll be all right. She'll be all right. She'll work through this." And sure enough, I did. That was kind of my turning point. That was the point when I said, "You know what? I can do this." And Dad didn't mention, but my freshman year of high school, when I first came here to Central, of course, it was slow pitch. And I did not play my freshman and sophomore years because I wanted to play fast pitch. That was what I had never played slow pitch before, ever. And finally, my junior year, I decided to play slow pitch, and I played in the outfield. And I enjoyed it. It was fine. But I think the very first game I was in, I was on first base, and I tried to steal. And and I remember Stan Murphy going, "Where are you? What are you doing?" And the umpire kind of laughed, so I came back and, realized, oh, you can't steal in slow pitch. So, that was kind of an adjustment year. And then my senior year was when fast pitch first started in high school. So I was very fortunate to play fast pitch that year. And out of the 9 of us on the ball field, 8 of us had played travel ball together. So we had a lot of softball experience. So that was very nice. I did have a basketball career here at Warren Central, and I think that's maybe the reason after Coach Lloyd kind of stepped down. Basketball wasn't my thing, by no means. And there's one picture in, I think it was maybe even I guess it would have been my junior year of high school in the yearbook where Coach Lloyd has us all in a huddle, and he's getting on to us good, showing us our next play, what we should be doing, what we should not be doing, and there I am standing in the huddle looking up in the crowd. That was kind of like the indicator, like, yeah, basketball wasn't my thing. That was short-lived. But I decided not to play basketball my senior year, and that was the year that Coach Stewart took over and for basketball, and I decided to concentrate more on softball because I knew that's where my career would be. And I worked hard. Like my dad said, there were several times when everyone else was out doing things and doing the high school teenage things even during the summer, and I was on the ball field or I was practicing. I did tear the gutters off the house. Neighbors, they would complain. 7 o'clock in the morning you hear this banging, and there I was. There was a time when, Dad, I just don't think I can do this. I can't do it, and he'd always just kind of leave it up to me. And, and then I'd kind of have that guilty feeling like, no, this is what I need to do. And I was fortunate enough to see my grandmother pitch one time, and it was when she was 63 years old. We were in the Smoky Mountains, and we all went to, a bunch of our family goes, and we all went to a ball field. And I saw my grandmother pitch, and that was kind of the first time I had ever seen her pitch. I'd always heard wonderful stories about her. But I had the privilege of seeing her pitch, and she was a slingshot pitcher. And even at 63 years old, I think she struck out my dad. She struck out my uncle. She was tough, very tough. That's, like my dad said, it's just kind of in my genes. I do have the privilege now of coaching my daughter in her softball, and, it's a wonderful, wonderful thing to be able to do. If she's a softball player, that's great. If she's not, that's great. I just always instill in our kids to be the best they can be. My husband, Jason, I have to tell, we'll be married 11 years this year, but we've been together for 19 years. That's what's kind of crazy. We met here when I was a freshman in high school. He was a junior, and we met on the school bus. Kind of a funny story, but he had gotten his license taken away and got put on the school bus by his dad. And we met on the school bus. I sit down beside him and I said, "Hi, I'm Kelly." And he said, "Yeah, I know who you are." He was, like, "Oh, yeah." And so then we just kind of met. We started dating and dated all through high school and through college. And now we're married and have 2 beautiful kids. So it's been a wonderful experience. I would like to say, and thanks to some people, my family, all my family too, for just being there throughout the years, going to games, supporting me. We're very busy. I even look at the amount of money that my parents spent on pitching lessons and clinics and camps, and it was all well worth it. Also, I do teach here now at Warren Central, and I had the privilege when I first started teaching to teach at Richardsville under Miss Goff, and then I decided I remember we were sitting at Wendy's on Scottsville Road, and someone had told me that Central had an assistant softball position opening. And when they told me, I said, "Oh, no, I'm not interested. I don't ever want to teach high school. It's just, they're a different ball game. I just cannot do it." And so I said, "No, I'll stay at Richardsville." And we were sitting at Wendy's, and I looked at my husband, and I said, "You know what? I think I want to go to Warren Central and teach and coach." And he kind of said, "Are you serious?" And I said, "Yeah, I really do. I think I want to do this." And so here I am, 9 years later at Warren Central. I came here under Mr. Dyer, and then Miss Goff came, and then Mr. McCraney was interim, and now under Miss Hood, who was also my freshman PE teacher. So my blood kind of bleeds blue. It's just Warren Central through and through. I'm so proud to be a Dragon here as a student, and then also coming back as a teacher and as a coach. So again, I'd like to thank you all for this honor. This has been a wonderful experience, and just an honor to be up here and being inducted into the inaugural class, and also with the other individuals that are up here. So thank you.
got lucky, Reilly. I have been replaced by a surprise presenter. I'll tell a couple of quick stories on Tim, and we'll keep moving here. But back in the show you how bad this guy wanted to coach at Warren Central. Actually, he and I go back many years. We used to be at some Super Bowl parties at a mutual friend's house who coaches at another school. And we'd have some big times, and I think it was around that Bear Shuffle days we first were at and got to know each other real well. And then, we got to know each other, and then, I think in the mid-'90s, job came open here. Every week. Hey, Scott, what do you know about the Central job? Right now, Tim, I don't know anything. He would call me, and he was at Caverna, I believe, at the time. And it's like every week I'd get this phone call. What do you know about Central? What can I do? And we just talked, and that just shows you the passion and what he thought he could do here. So he didn't get it that first time, but the second time he got it, and the rest, they say, is history. And I'll tell one other quick story on Coach Reilly. We're at the Sweet 16. Of course, I do the sidelines, and we're up at Rupp Arena. So Tim's coming off the floor, and I'm interviewing Tim, and I forgot how I phrased the question, and he said, "Well, we played pretty S-word," and he looked at me and said, "We're on the air, aren't we?" I said, "Yeah," and he just started laughing. He lost it from there, and everybody got a kick out of it, and I think you remember saying that, and it was just like everybody went like, he said that, and we just went on, But he's done a wonderful job here, and he's really done a great job. And Tim, I'm not gonna present you. I think your lovely wife Pam would like to have the honor. Pam.
Well, about 2 weeks ago, Tim asked me to do this, and I thought, I can't do this. He knew I didn't really want to do it. So I started thinking of all these other people that he could ask. What about this person? Yeah, that person. And they were all very special people to him, and he couldn't limit to one person. So I thought about it. What could I say? Would I goof up? And on the way here, I said, well, who's going to introduce you? And he said, Scott Thomason. And then after he didn't cry for Coach Lloyd, I thought, I better try. So as Tim's wife, I've met a lot of people, and I go out to the mall, and I'll see somebody, and they're with somebody else, and they'll introduce me, and they'll say, this is Pam Reilly. And until they say Tim Reilly's wife, they don't really know who I am. But it doesn't really bother me, because I'm very proud of Tim. And he's had many accomplishments, which most of you know of. And some things you may not know, though, is that he's always made his family very much a part of his program. The year that he won, one year when I think he was 23-3, or 3-23, Brooke was born during that state tournament. Tim was home for that. Didn't have a team playing, but she was born. So every year, those 6 consecutive years, we would be at the state tournament, and Brooke would have her birthday. And that was okay, because she always got to go to Gaddy World, or Gaddy Town, so she was okay with that. Well, the year that he won in 2004, we were on the way to Rupp Arena, and we sang Happy Birthday to Brooke. And Tim, was like, let's win this for Brooke. And they won it. I don't know if it was for Brooke, but they won it. And then the next year, 2005, we all couldn't believe it, but they made it to the state finals. They lost, and we were all down. We were disappointed, even though it was a great year. And we're riding back to the hotel that night, and Brooke, she was all of 6 years old. She said, Mom, do you think the team would sing Happy Birthday to me, just like they did last year? And I was like, well, last year was different. We won, Now we just lost. I don't, so I turned to Tim, and I was like, Tim, Brooke would like for them to sing Happy Birthday. And he was like, yeah, we can do that. So they started singing Happy Birthday to Brooke, even though they just got beat in Rupp Arena championship game. And then when that song was over, somebody in the back of the bus started the Warren Central fight song. And it just gives me chills to this day, because it was like from a movie. Everybody was singing it. Brooke Reilly was singing it. I graduated from North Hardin. I don't know my fight song. I know Warren Central's fight song. Last year, when they went to the state tournament, they played in the first game. And I thought, you know, my son being a sophomore, he was dressing. I thought, this is a team that we could probably beat pretty good, so Drake might actually get in. So I was pretty excited for him. I was filming, and sure enough, we were up by 20. The last minute of the game, Drake gets in. We were all very excited. Everybody's patting me on the back. He got his 1 minute. He had a steal, and he had a three-point basket. And, of course, I was thrilled. Grandparents were thrilled. Tim Reilly was no prouder than anybody else. He was very proud. If you saw the program tonight with Tim's picture, there's a picture of our other son, Brett, hugging. Tim, whenever he won, whenever he lost, he always looked for his family. So there he was, hugging his son. I'm not sure what year that was. It might have been the year that you won state, 2004. So he's always made his family a part of the program. His players today, his former players, are part of our big family. Go back 20 years to Covington Homes. This summer we went up there. He met with players, former players, and he's a friend now. He's very well respected. So I am very proud to introduce my husband, Tim Reilly.
My speech is now. I was going to talk about everybody that I yeah, I'll just talk a little loud. My speech was about everybody that I wanted to ask to introduce me. After I asked Pam to introduce me, and she turned me down. So that was what my speech was about, and I'll get to that in just a second. Two people I want to mention. One is Jimmy Renault. I was fortunate my first year that Jimmy got to be my bus driver. And we've named our outstanding senior every year since that year after Jimmy Renault. He drove the bus in Warren Central for, what, 38 years, Jimmy? Was it 38? 38 years. That was the greatest thing. I thought that was the neatest thing. For 38 years, he got on that bus and transported Warren Central basketball team, football team, girls team, and everybody everywhere. And I was honored to be able to have a year with Jimmy. I'll mention my parents have been great for this ride. But my parents have been able to go on this ride with me. They've been right there. I'm still a mama's boy. He's turning 50, and I'm still a mama's boy. And to see them enjoy this basketball run has been great. People have asked me before why I got coaching, and my parents were the biggest influence. My dad took me to games, and I got to start out going to see Clem and Jim Haskins, Dwight Smith, and Greg Smith, and Wayne Chapman, and the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers. I had a WKU all the way NCAA button as a child. It was one of my cherished little prizes. My dad also took me to see Jim McDaniels play high school basketball. Those were my two heroes growing up. Yesterday, Clem Haskins called me on the phone. Today, Jim McDaniels called me on the phone. My heroes as a child are my friends now. That's very few people are that fortunate. But Clem was, I cut my teeth with learning basketball under Coach Haskins as a student in Western. And I was blown away what all he knew about basketball. And that was the start. I had no idea there was that much to be learned from basketball. And I'd go to his practices and sit and listen and wipe up sweat and beat on guys with dummies, anything that Coach wanted me to do. And that's where I cut my teeth on basketball. So I wanted to mention Coach Haskins and what he meant to me. There's some of the people that I was going to talk about to introduce me. There's so many of them. My family, my boys, they've been able to go down this big ride with me. And it's been so much fun. They've got to do stuff that I never dreamed I could do when I was a young kid. It's been great for them to be a part of it. And then, of course, my daughter, Brooke, going back to Coach Haskins. I remember my mom come home one year when I was a little boy and she had Clem's autograph. She made a big mistake. She only got one Clem Haskins autograph. She had 2 sons. Big mistake. Now, I was a lot smarter as a parent than my mother. When Clem wrote his book, I bought 2 books. And I went in and Clem signed them to both boys, not knowing I was going to get a little girl later on. So I'm one down, Coach. I'm one down. And Clem signed it to both of them. But I was smarter than Mom. But Mom brought home a Clem Haskins autograph, and that was a mistake. She didn't get 2 of them. But there's so many people. My family. Eric Wilson's here. He was my assistant coach the first year. And how bad we were. We went 6-18 in varsity. Eric had an even better year than I have. He didn't win a game that year. And he hung right in there. And right after that, he became the AD. And he's been a great friend. He's just won. Todd Stewart and I worked together for 11 years and never had a disagreement. 11 years, the girls coach and the boys coach worked together and never had a crossword with each other. That's the kind of guy he is. Now, hopefully he'll tell everybody that's the kind of guy I am. But that's the kind of, we've never had a crossword. We always worked it out. There was never a meeting with a principal over gym time when he and I were together. I could ask Joe Hood, who's been a great friend to me, and who was here and helped me get this job. I could ask Joe to introduce me. And Joe's son, Joe Curry, he was great to coach because I couldn't say anything uglier to Joe than his dad had already said to him. That made, I could just, and Joe was great for that team because I could just beat on him, and he had 4 other starters. If I'd have beat on them like I beat on Joe, they'd have died. But Joe could take it, and those other guys, they'd fall in line when I'm getting on Joe, and Joe was so much fun to coach. But if he was funny, but if his dad's Joe Hood, which I think it is, and Lisa Hood's his mama, there ain't no way he could be anything but funny. I mean, there ain't no way he could be anything but funny. He was so much fun to coach. Phil Easton's here. He was the first principal to ever hire me and been a mentor to me. I could ask Phil to do it. Rhonda Biller's here. She's been a great friend to me in this building, along with a whole host of other teachers in this building. But Rhonda's been she's been there. She's been for the kids. Some of you remember the year we won the state championship. There was a fight. We were playing an Eastern Kentucky team. They were ugly to our kids. And there was a fight. And when we went to the locker room at halftime, Rhonda Biller's down there on the floor to grab that kid up and to love on that kid and to help him deal with what he was dealing with. And that's the kind of help I've had here. That's the kind of help I've had here. I couldn't talk without talking about Mr. Barry Dyer. Mr. Barry Dyer hired me to be the coach here. Mr. Barry Dyer rode through a 3-23 record. Now, it ain't always been fun here now. We went 3-23 my second year here. Mr. Dyer took me out to eat at Old Charlie's. We used to be on the bypass over here. Mr. Dyer said, well, all right, Coach, what's it going to be like? I said, Mr. Dyer, we're going to win JV games this year, and we'll get through this year, and we'll start winning next year. And he rode right through there with us, 3-23, and he hung right in there with me. I've always been appreciative of Mr. Dyer because when I got the job, a local guy here in town saw me down on the square. We did one of those little Friday night deals on the square. And he said, I heard you got that job. He said, I heard you're the only one to apply for it. Barry Dyer didn't open the process back up. He let me be the only guy to apply for the job. And I've always been appreciative of Mr. Dyer, and I've always been indebted to you. Always been indebted to you. I've had so many good assistant coaches since I've been here. I've had just unbelievable. 4 of them have gone on to be head coaches. I've got, I think it's 4. I tried to count them. It might be more than that. I got 3 of them here tonight with me, William Munsell and Carlos Quarles and Daryl Hall are here, and I've had so many good ones. I've had so much help inside this building. I've had great principals who wanted us to win. Barry Dyer, Miss Goff, Kathy Goff, Larry McCraney, Lisa Hood, they wanted us to win. And you don't do what we did here without other people wanting this to happen. without other people supporting and wanting it to happen. The staff here has been so great to the students here. So great to the students here. George Fant, who plays for me now, is one of the sweetest kids ever, and he was complaining about Miss Biller one day in class. And two of my former players were in the locker room, and I said, "Come here, George. Tell these two guys about you complaining about Miss Biller." So George started complaining. They cut him off right off the bat and said, "If you're mad at Miss Biller, it's your fault. Shut up and start doing what's right, you know." And that's when I've had that kind of support. I've had such great support. My wife has been a trooper. My wife and my family have been part of it, like I said. Now, Pam doesn't make cookies for the guys. And she don't make no brownies for them. I kid her all the time. Mike Rogers has got the greatest coach's wife I've ever been around. Rebecca's unbelievable. And I'll say, "Mike, I want you to get Rebecca to do an in-service with Pam on how to be a coach's wife." And he asked for $500. He goes, "All right, we'll do it for $500. But this is what Pam will do. When I had a young man on my team whose mother was crack addicted, and she had to be sent off, we moved this young guy into our house. And he lives for 6 months with us. And it wasn't easy for him being here. That's what she'd do. That's what she'd do. When I bust out a guy for not playing hard, she'd come in the locker room and they'd hug her, even though I'd talk to him like a dog for how they play basketball. And she'd hug them. And that's what she does. That's what she does. She let me coach them. She let me love on them. She's cared about them, and that's what she's done. Don't wait for no brownies. They're not coming. They're not coming. But you know, and with that guy that stayed with us, we had to keep some things secret from Pam about that guy. When he thought he was being funny and telling Drake and Brett when they were real little that Freddy Krueger was coming over. I had to say, "Freddy Krueger's not coming over and he's stupid. Go to bed." Then I told him, I said, "You rebound for me. You don't do nothing for that girl. She finds out what you're saying to her boys, you're gone. So don't do that. Don't do that." More than anything, I got to thank the players that I've coached. I'm smart enough to understand why we won here. I think the one thing I've proven is that I can coach good players. I don't think that's the only thing I've proven since I've been here. I can coach good players. At one point in time, after that 3-23 season, I hadn't had great jobs, and I had lost 60 games more than I had won. I was 60 games in the hole to what I had won. And since then, it's been an unbelievable run. It's been an unbelievable run. I talked to my team last night about this, and I know why we've won. I know why we've won. We've won because I've had special kids who allowed me to coach them and who cared about each other and did the right thing, and that's why we've won. We've also won. I can't go any further without talking about, had so much support in the community. We mentioned Robert Talley earlier. Robert was a great friend to me and a great Warren Central fan. The night we beat Bowling Green in football this year, either text message or call from Robert Talley throughout the entire game. And Robert did little things for me. He took care of our kids. And he'd take them places. He'd tell me what was going on with another friend, Danny Crowe, in the back, has been a great friend to me. Danny, when we went 3-23 that year, he came by the house, wrote a note on my door. He said, "Coach, you're the best coach in the area. Hang in there." And that meant a lot to me. Danny also always been there. I'll tell you a funny story about Danny. I wasn't a good basketball player. I was 5 feet 2 inches tall when I was a freshman in high school. 5'4" as a sophomore. So our freshman team one night was playing Warren East's freshman team. A little short kid going through the layup lines, a little bit on the heavy side. And he's going through the layup lines, and I said, "Danny, there I am, right there, Danny. That kid, that's me." And Danny said, "Yep, that boy might be the head coach of the state championship basketball team one day." And I said, "Maybe he will. Maybe he will." But it's been a great ride. It's such an honor. I mean, with this group of people, and like Joe said, the people that didn't get it, some of the people that y'all selected us over them, it's unbelievable. And I thank all of these people. I need to bust on Vanous and Joe before we leave here now. The year we went 3-23, Vanous' way of telling me we need to change the schedule was a whole lot different when he said it up here. He said, boy, you got to do something about that schedule. And then he started that big old deep laugh again, man. You got to do something about that schedule. And he just laughed at me. And it wasn't very funny to me at that time. And then Joe had one of his football parties. I guess that was in 99 or 98, 99. It was the year we were 3-23, and it was tomorrow. So it was the anniversary of that because it was the NFC AFC championship game. And Joe was running around telling everybody that I was their homecoming day. Warren Central's homecoming day. Warren Central and Tim Reilly. And I'm taking a beat. And Jess Ellison, Clem, you know me, Jess. Joe goes, Jess, who y'all playing for homecoming? Jess licked his lips and said, Warren Central. But, you know, when Vanous and Joe were busting on you, you knew they were for you. And winning the state championship was fun. This is a greater honor, and I'm very appreciative and humbled by it. I want you to know there's a whole lot of people that are part of this. This is not me. This is not me. This is all about so many other people that have helped me. And I know I've missed some people that I love to mention, but I can't. I can talk forever about the different people that have helped me. It would take me forever. But thank you so much. Thank you, Pam. Thanks, everybody.
We thank everyone for coming out. I think he's just scared of microphones. We know it's been kind of a long night, but it's been great for these folks up here to be able to share special memories about their days of being involved here and still are here at Warren Central High School. As they say, once a dragon, you're always a dragon. And before we dismiss, one more time, the inaugural class 2011 Warren Central Athletic Hall of Fame. We thank you so much. Hopefully this will grow and grow, that we will fill this auditorium, and hopefully you've had a good time. Thanks to everyone involved. Please drive safely. Have a good night, and thank you for coming out and making this a special night here at Warren Central. Thank you.